If anybody gives me a hard time for uploading and or singing this, then I don't want to sing with you. And if you think I'm ignorant, maybe because we have different beliefs, well, that's on you. Maybe you haven't looked into it, maybe you have, but hey, we don't have to agree on everything. Let's do this. Something's going wrong in the neighborhood. Why do we see further than we should? All around us people unaware, lied to and deceived without a care. There simply is no curve inside. You know we don't spend all day and night. It seems they want our minds flooded with lies. If you wanna bust the globe, I know these guys. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Ghostbusters! Who you gonna call when the horizon flattens out? Go ahead, call them up, see what that's about. We can go around in circles trying to find this out, but if we looking for the truth, about to find it out. NASA can't go to space, so we hit the roof. Get it, hit the roof, and it all came to light with 200 proofs. Now I'm just really sick of people lying to me, so when I tell the truth, don't come crying to me. Pick up the phone, get on the line with me. Line with me. Who you gonna call? Who you gonna call? Ghostbusters! Ghostbusters! I can't help myself. Glowbusters! Yeah. That's right. Oh, man.
And welcome everybody to Globebusters. How might the sun work on a flat Earth? I'm your host, Bob Xanadude60, and we are back with another great show for you today. Gonna go a little bit out into speculative land today, but you know me, I like to do that. Because honestly, just reciting the same old facts and things like that, after a while tend to get a little bit boring. And I think that the only way we're ever going to make any progress is by throwing some spitballs out there and seeing what sticks. I think that's a good idea, and I think that there's enough information available from enough places that that internet hive mind people have collected enough of it that they have allowed us to really put together, at least in this instant, I think a coherent picture of what might be going on. Do you agree? I don't know. I guess you'll have to find out. But we're going to get into that here shortly, and I do want to say before we go, anywhere near that, as always, this is the opinion. What's spoken here is the opinion of the panel, and exclusively our opinion. We are not claiming it as fact. We each speak for our own selves, and nobody is locked into anything as far as I know. But I do have to tell you that in my opinion, the evidence is pretty compelling. It's very, very interesting, and I think you guys are going to enjoy some of this because it's something that we've heard a little bit about before, and we're going to expand on it quite a bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panel today. And first up, as always, is Jeran from Jeranism. How you doing today, Jeran?
Doing great, Bob. Thanks. Just excited to be here. Happy to be here, and looking forward to the show.
Awesome. Very cool. Yes. And also, let's see. Wow, I just realized that Rodrigo wasn't here. Holy cow! I think that's got to be like a world's first.
Just call the police.
I know. Whoa, that's crazy. Well,
I think he mentioned that he wasn't going to be able to make it for Easter or something with his family. I might be wrong on that, but I thought there was some mention of that, a family event.
All right.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. Sure, I feel better, boy. I'll tell you, as punctual as he is, that's weird not to have him here. So that's cool.
I was going to start calling all the hospitals, so I'm glad I don't have to do that.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Next up, we have with us Jon TheMorgile. How you doing today, Jon?
I'm doing fine, Bob. Thank you for asking. Beautiful day here in Kansas today, and glad to be here with you guys.
Let's make something clear, though. Today is April 4th, 2021, because I got so many people who wrote me and said, what's going on with Globebusters? When are you going to have another show? And I said, we did have a show. And they said, no, I listened and Jon TheMorgile was on. It was an old one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is April 4th. Indeed, it is 2021.
So just making sure people know that if you're listening to this now, just because John's on it doesn't mean it's an old show.
That's right. Boy, I'll tell you, I think we did one or maybe two shows on replays where Jon was on there. And I mean, that threw everybody for a loop. It's like, oh my God, John's back. This is great. And now when he actually came on, then everybody's saying, oh, these are all repeats now.
Just keeping everybody on their toes, man. You know.
Right. Just wait till next week when TJ's on. Really.
Oh man, that'll really screw with people, right? We'll have to do that. Yeah, get TJ on and then bring Kirk on and say, all right, is this now or is this live or Memorex?
Reunion show. Yeah, there you go.
Yep, that'll be cool. So, all right. Next up, we have with us my wife, Cami, Aisling717, who's going to be telling us about, her particular model on this today and how she has looked at the sun and, different methods of polarizing and what we could be seeing in this new footage, which you guys are going to see today, could very likely be a real thing. I tend to think it is. I know Crow 777 does. Pretty sure Chris Van Matre does. And in fact, Crow 777 just released a little blurb about that, and I'll play that here in just a minute, about his interview with Cami and Chris. And it's pretty interesting what he has to say. So you guys will probably want to catch that from Crow 777 as well. But anyway, so Cami, how are you doing?
I'm doing really good. These are fun times, exciting times with what's going on. And I'm happy to be here today. I'm excited to introduce some different concepts and different possibilities a little bit later on in the show. And again, as Bob mentioned, there are possibilities, but exciting ones. And I'm interested to hear any feedback. And again, any errors that we're finding in my work, because again, it's a learning experience. But this is going to be a fun show today. Get polarized is right, Jimmy. We're going to get polarized.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, very good. And last but certainly not least, we have the man of the hour. He's been on here several times before with the Globebusters. He and I used to be neighbors back in Colorado, and he has since moved on to Texas. And of course, now I'm in South Carolina. But it was a wonderful pleasure to see him last week. He was able to make it down for the Solar Return Festival. And we were just sitting around, getting things prepped, and the doorbell rang, and Zach completely freaked out. And I'm like, what's going on? What's going on? Because he's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. And lo and behold, it was Chris Van Matre at the door. So we were really happy to see him. So we have with us today, Chris Van Matre. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been on, and I had a great time last week visiting with everybody out there. And a nice day here in Houston, about 73 degrees.
Yeah, that's about exactly what it is here in South Carolina. So that's awesome. Very cool. Okay, so I guess what I want to do first is I think I want to run that little promo by that Crow 777 just put out. And let's see, where did I do with that? Not there. Let's go here. And I think I have it queued up, and let me go to the 1 minute mark, and let's just listen to like a minute or two of this, what Crow says about this. And that'll give you guys a little precursor about what's going on, with his show with Cami and Chris on it. And then we will move forward with ours. So without further ado, here is Crow 777.
All right, man. Welcome to Crow 777 Radio. This is a bumper for episode 306.5. This is a 0.5 episode. The full interview, the 0.5 interview that we do with Jason, myself, Chris Van Matre, and Cami Knodel will run for members only, but we will tell you exactly what happened here. Jason recently did a gig at the Solar Return Festival where he bumps into Chris Van Matre. To give you the backstory, In spring of 2015, I first filmed The Sun You Don't See. Some years later, Chris Van Matre with a hydrogen alpha solar scope replicates what I do. He's now replicated it in Colorado, in Houston, and in South Carolina, where the festival was, showing a different position for the sun you don't see each time. But Jason put me on the phone with him at the festival, and I told him I was going to start picking up filming again this spring, because I should be recovered enough to lift up the scope, which is pretty big. And I suggested to him that we try to get polarized light filters on our hydrogen alpha telescopes to film the sun. Lo and behold, Cami Knodel was there, who makes a habit of using polarized light filters, and she had some big ones. The next day, Chris and Cami, and I'm not sure who else, go out, film with the solar scope, see the sun we don't see, or the second sun, what I'm currently calling the spiritual sun, and they put a polarized filter on it, and they eclipsed it away. Now, we go into great detail with Cami, who's an expert on these things, about what that means. Suffice it to say, I think we're not far away from being able to claim, like the lunar wave, this is the real deal, and there's no telling me otherwise. This test is very meaningful. So this clip you're listening to here will also run in the free area of crow777radio.com. Members at crow777radio.com can log in and get the full episode. And this is wholly about censorship. My YouTube's picking up strikes again. Clips are getting removed. It's a whole thing, and I'm about done with it. I will be launching a new website soon, and probably all the video that I run, only bumpers will ever see YouTube, and I'll make a video area on my site. Did I get all that, Jason?
You did, and the one thing I will add in is that while Chris did film the second sun, or the spirit sun as you're going to call it, in both Colorado and Houston, when he did it in South Carolina, it was not off to the side like it was even when you shot it, but it was directly beneath it, which was very interesting, because for all the naysayers who were just saying, oh, that's something just going on inside the lenses, some kind of reflection or whatnot, wouldn't that always be the exact same thing every time? I don't know exactly, but it sounds like it's lending a lot more credence to it being an actual object at this point.
Yeah, well, for me, that's true. Everything you just said is true, but the kind of icing on the cake here is that the polarizing filter made it disappear. You can't make the sun we see with our eyes disappear with a polarizing light filter, and Cami describes what that means. It proves it's an object. We'll get into it. There's a whole explanation that comes behind, but in this clip, we will also provide the directions that the second sun that you don't see has been shot in and where it was located, so people can go out and look. First couple times, it was a sun and a half up and about 2.5 suns to the left. Both times I shot it and Chris. The next time it was slightly different, but the last time they shot it, it was directly below the sun we see with our eyes. But there it is. The full clip will be running for members at crow777radio.com, CRROW777radio.com. We hope to see you there, man.
All right, beautiful. Hey, I like the fact that he calls it the spirit sun. That's kind of cool, unique. So, all right. So let me go back to my whole screen. Cami, do you have something to say about that?
I was going to say that, yeah, while listening and doing the promo for the show, the spiritual sun is completely fascinating, and it's an area that we're only going to get through. I'm going to go over how polarizing works and details like that on the show today, but the Crow Show, we're going to cover so many more areas. And so if you think that you watch this show that you're covering the Crow Show, no, because Crow adds so much brilliance and his own insight into it, and the spirit sun. So while you were looking, I just wanted to mention that they're two very different shows.
Yep, beautiful. Okay. Cool. So now in the background, what I've got playing is, another take on this. Of course, you guys know I like to do this, but this is Flat Water, Flat Earth's take on it, and it will be in the show notes. But basically, he is kind of, speaking along the same lines. Now, he has tracked this through, I think, the Book of Enoch, and he and a guy named Paul Schieft actually created this model many years ago. I mean, this thing's been out for a long, long time. But essentially what it's saying is, and also F.E. Core basically did something that was very similar to this when they rendered this out. But it speaks of a primary source. I guess you would call that the spirit sun. And what's happening is it is being manipulated around the, I guess for lack of a better word, the firmament, and it is creating a parabolic and holographic type of projection of the sun. And so occasionally what happens then is that when people like Chris go out there and they photograph it or videograph it with their hydrogen alpha filters, and this doesn't happen all the time, but it's happened now several enough times between Chris Van Matre doing it in 3 different locations and Crow doing it, wherever he's at, that they've caught it enough times that I think that it's probably going to allow us to possibly make predictions of where it may show up. Now, there's a few other theories that we have that are tied into this that may explain that, and we'll touch on some of those today. But this is really, really interesting, as far as that goes. And so what I'm going to do, I guess I'll go ahead and say, Chris, do you want to say anything about it? I'm going to get it queued up, and then we'll play it. And then do you just want to say anything in preface to it?
Oh, you're going to queue up the footage that I shot?
You betcha.
I'll go ahead and comment after you show it. How's that?
All right, that sounds good. Let's see. First of all, let me find the right one. That's not it. Okay, hang on just a second. Oh, here it is. All right. So let's go ahead and let's see. Should I do this with audio or without audio? Do you think is better, Chris?
On this one, I think you could go with audio.
Okay. Let me reshare it with audio. This is such a pain. I hate this. Share screen. Chrome tab. Share audio. The second sun. All right. Here we go. Let's go ahead and start this from the beginning. And if any point, just tell me to pause and I will pause it and we will go. So here we go.
You're about to watch a clip from Good Times for All's channel, where he is with Chris Van Matre, looking at the possible second sun. I'll have links to both of their channels in the description. Please subscribe to both of them if you haven't already. I truly don't know what to make of this second sun. All I can say that there's a reasonable chance that this is a real phenomenon. It's potentially huge, and so I am sharing it. Here is part of a text that I sent to Chris. Hope you're well, Chris. I watched your video on the double sun from Good Times for All. It's so shocking that I'm still having a hard time believing it. Are you absolutely sure it's not a camera effect? Have you tried to recreate the effect by pointing at another light source? I'm not challenging you. I want to share that information. And here is Chris's reply in part. I don't believe it's refraction within the telescope, because if it was refraction within the telescope, the refraction would be the same every time, and it isn't. It's drastically different in the 3 locations that I filmed it. We've also been using polarizing lenses on it, and there's something different between the sun that we do see and the sun that we don't. The sun that we don't see reacts to a single polarizer, which that's a long discussion to explain why that happens. Here are 2 more clips of the second sun that you haven't seen.
So that's the refraction that they talk about. Now, if I cut the light down, there's the second one, the sun we don't see. Now, if I go back up here, I'll bring in all the light and the refraction. Now you have the refraction, but you still have this sun. Yeah. So when they talk about refraction within this telescope, that's what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. That was perfect. Yeah, just like that. Awesome. Oh, that is so cool.
Let me know when you want me to move it down.
Okay, go ahead and move it. All right.
What is it? I really don't know, but I hope that more genuine truth seekers investigate, because I find it fascinating and it could change our perception of how cosmology truly works. Chris Van Matre is going to be on crow777radio.com to discuss the second sun on Sunday or Monday. I urge everyone to head over to crow777radio.com to subscribe and listen to the show. Thank you.
Okay, and there we have that. So, I think I'm probably going a little bit too fast here, guys, because I know that that Cami wanted to make sure that Baldini was going to be on here for certain sections of this. So I think what we'll probably do is we'll just kind of, if this is okay with everybody, is we'll just kind of pause this right here and give everybody a little bit to think about, and then I'll cover some of the other stuff, and then hopefully we can get Baldini in here, because Cami and Baldini kind of have this symbiotic relationship where they understand each other really well, and Baldini can kind of fill in the blanks, with Cami, what Cami's trying to express, and he's even better at that than I am. But so does that sound good for you guys? And we'll just cover a couple of those things first.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay.
Another way of putting this is I tend to think in pictures and throw out the wrong words. I'm a very, very visual thinker. And Baldini has the ability to, Bob is a very, very technical language, that language is everything. I might throw out a wrong word, and Baldini will actually catch my wrong word and translate to my husband what I am saying. It's like a translator. He speaks Cami. He sees my pictures. It's a very neat skill. I have met very few people like it, so it's fun. And if we can wait it out, I think it will help a lot on any questions. He can clarify things.
Okay, that sounds good enough to me. Yeah, and I apologize for that. I was so excited about this. I just blasted through everything that I wanted to talk about first, because I'm really excited about this, and I think everybody else will be as well when they see what's going on. But yeah, there's definitely some other stuff that we want to cover. The first thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, guys, is the Solar Return Festival. Okay, now that was really cool because, oops, hang on a second. Let me get back to one thing here. There it is. I'm just going to go ahead and let this play back one more time. All right, so the Solar Return Festival was really cool. It was last Friday and Saturday, and we had, I don't know, what do you think, Chris and Cami? There's like 250 people, maybe more there, do you think?
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty good guesstimate, about 200, 250 people. I think there was a few more at the park than there was on the second day.
Yeah, I think so too. That sounds about right. But anyway, so lots of people started, kind of filtering in on, Friday morning, and we had the park rented all day long, and the day was absolutely beautiful. And so, all kinds of things went on. They launched balloons. They had RC airplanes that were flying around. I think the police did get called, and they showed up at one point, but they were generally pretty cool about it. Cami handled the situation with them, and they were cool with it and went away, and didn't get any harassment over that. And then the next day, on Saturday, with the main event itself, was absolutely incredible. The musicians that were there were just absolutely fabulous. Of course, everybody knows that you had OBL, One Big Love, was there, and they're really, really good. And a lot of the stuff that they've been singing about for years, of course, is absolutely manifesting, today, that we see. Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms was there, and I had no idea he was kind of this one-man band, because I was wondering, it's like, well, where are the Flat Earthworms? But I was a little bit surprised, and amazing, how much talent one person can bring, and all the things that he was able to do. So he was amazing. And then, let's see, who else was there? Media Bear. And Media Bear is a guy that I haven't, I've only seen a few times, but he was doing all kinds of stuff, and he was walking around with a camera, with him the whole time, and doing little small interviews and stuff, and just making people laugh in general. But no, it definitely was not Jake the Asshole. He is not Media Bear. Somebody told Jeran that that's who they thought Media Bear was, but no, we saw him without his mask. And not only that, he's like 6'3" or something like that. So he's a pretty tall dude. So yeah. So yeah, it was just an incredible event. Of course, when ODD came on, the place went absolutely crazy. ODD did show up with Nina, his girlfriend, and she was just really, really sweet. She was very nice in person, and just really great personality. And of course, she's gorgeous too. But then, hey, that's Matt for you. But so when they got there, ODD just came out and absolutely blew that place away. It was so absolutely incredible. I couldn't believe it. And he was really, really good, because he was so much better even at this event than he was at Denver. And in Denver, of course, he really hadn't practiced much, and he had forgotten some of the words and stuff, but still, I mean, he had the place completely going crazy there. And this was after the Flat Earth Festival in Denver that was going on. But yeah, what an incredible event. And then I was honored, and I should have gotten a picture of this thing, but I was honored with the first annual Knodel Prize. Okay, so what that was, first of all, it's a beautiful little trophy, and I'll have to get a picture of it and show you guys, but it's a beautiful little trophy, and it has a globe on the top of it, right? And it was presented, I guess Commercial Sound and Video kind of came up with this idea because of the fact that, I have been getting all this credit for supposedly proving Earth rotation. And so he kind of created this as a tongue-in-cheek award. And, we're going to kind of give that out, I think, really in the future, for people that make contributions of technical excellence, into the community. And now I'm not saying that I did that, but one thing that I think that I did do is, afterwards we were, puzzled, obviously, by the results that we found with the fiber optic gyro. And so we devised an experiment to see if we could, prove whether it was something like Earth rotation or something else altogether, which of course I have been, positing that it was the luminiferous ether. We were able to do that. And I think our results were fairly conclusive. At the time, of course, Chris Van Matre, Zach, myself, and several other people in FE Core were involved in this. And I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but I actually released that information to Brandon's, right? The guy that took over Ranty's show. And of course, all the ballers have it. Everybody's doing this analysis on it. There's this big furor going on with it, which is fine, because honestly, we weren't doing a lot with it. And it was kind of nice to see the additional analysis being done on it. But, as I told them, basically, what they found out was exactly what I said is exactly what happened. That, when we changed the elevation on the same latitude line, we had a fairly substantial change in rotation rate that was being registered. And of course, if we were actually on a ball Earth, that could never happen, because it wouldn't matter where you were on the ball Earth, what elevation you would be at, that rotation rate would never change. And yet we were able to substantially affect it, by going up and down an elevations, about a 10,000 foot variance on the same latitude line, right? So, and, beyond that, Chris went out and we did the test with Chris, I think, on like Guanella Pass and also on Pikes Peak. And then Chris, you went out to a couple different places in Eastern Colorado, and just kind of, can you summarize just a little bit about what you did with the fog out there?
Yeah, I think I went out to, I think, close to Deer Trail, Colorado, to do the one that was on the same latitude as, or longitude as the one on Guanella Pass. And then the other one, I drove almost out to the Kansas border by Cheyenne Wells, Colorado, to do that one. And that one was kind of interesting. I was set up on the side of the dirt road next to a cornfield, and I was about ready to break down when the sheriff rolled up and wanted to know what I was doing. But he was extremely nice. Once I told him exactly what I was doing, he just kind of looked at me funny and told me to have a good evening and left. So it wasn't that bad of a experience.
Yep, that's awesome. So, and then of course after that, we turned over that data to Sandor and also Stefan, I believe, and they of course began the breakdown on it. And what they found was exactly what we had posited would happen. And just like a vortex based, like a tornado, we found that there was a definite change in velocity, rotational velocity, from 10,000 foot higher, the Pikes Peak and Guanella Pass levels, down to the levels out on the plain. So believe it or not, everybody seemed to be kind of unimpressed by that, which kind of, I don't know what to think about that exactly, because it did in fact show that the data set of what we were saying was happening. But the globe earthers and the flat earthers once again went back to their own position. The flat earthers basically were saying, well, it's changing something. Well, that can't happen on a ball. And the ball earthers are saying, well, this thing wasn't meant to measure the luminiferous ether, right? So they're discounting the ether out of it altogether. Therefore, it has to be Earth rotation. So it's like, well, that solved just about zero, right? And I suppose I could have predicted that happening, because the ballers are never going to acquiesce to any point whatsoever. And it just makes me realize more and more and more how futile it is really, trying to discuss this with them. And as much as I would really like to include them in some of this, the biases are so strong. And it's not only on the baller side. I mean, the flat earthers are that way too. But I think that realistically, and maybe I'm biased, but I think we really do have the stronger case. We have the stronger preponderance of evidence. In fact, I don't think the ballers really have any evidence to speak of. And I was in a discussion with a guy called Ike and Science that, in chat over a couple of videos that he was doing. And, that kind of broke down really fast and didn't go anywhere. So it's like, at this point, I just don't think that discussing this with them is going to be productive in any way, shape, or form. And that's why I've kind of taken the attitude that, where Globebusters is going to go from here on out, it's like, I'm done trying to convince people, what's going on. Now I want to expand on the flat Earth model, right? And that's why we're looking at this sun footage, and why we are going to start putting together some hypotheses, some ideas, about what is going on with it. Because you can only beat a dead horse so long, before it gets really, really old. So there you have it.
So Bob, is it fair to say that with this device, then you would never be able to measure no rotation?
Well, I mean, the device is meant to measure, not only rotation but pitch changes. But it's, what the ballers are claiming is that it measures a physical change. All right, but what we discovered is that it is the media itself that's moving, and this is something that they knew 100 years ago when they did Michelson-Gale, right? Michelson-Gale actually discovered this, way back 100 plus years ago. And that's why Airy's failure was essentially devised to determine, well, what is the answer? Is the rotation that was being picked up Earth rotation, or was it the luminiferous ether? And, they kind of posited that at the time, and then Airy's failure came in, and we showed the differences between the theory behind Airy's failure, which takes into consideration the ether model, which has a fixed speed for the spinning of the ether, which is what the light is propagating through, versus a relativity type of model, that the speeds would become additive. So if you're doing 1,000 miles an hour and you shoot a light beam, then all of a sudden you're doing 186,282 miles per second plus the 1,000 miles an hour, right, on top of it. But when you're talking about the luminiferous ether and not relativity, then they become separate, and the ether itself regulates the speed. And this is what we mean when we talk about that light speed and light propagation is a rate of induction into the luminiferous ether, right? So that makes a whole lot more sense, and that also explains things like, why when a light passes through water, it will slow down to about 0.6 C, about 60% of the speed of light. And then when it exits back out, well, it goes back up to the full speed of light. Well, that would be a violation of physics in the standard model, that mainstream is looking at it, right? So that can't happen. But in the ether model, then that rate of induction then simply resumes. And then that explains very easily that it's doing that. So to get back to your question, Jeran, yes, the fiber optic gyro and ring laser gyro were meant to measure very minute changes in orientation, on a total of up, down, left, right, forward, back, type axes, right? And that's what it was designed to do. But when the medium itself is actually moving, it detects that as well. And this is why when Honeywell set forth their calibration procedures for the ring laser gyroscope that they do, everything has to be absolutely not moving at all, so that they can get basically a track on the speed that the ether is moving, which then will allow them to compensate for that in the flight reference computer that's setting up all the navigations.
Does it have to know your location?
It doesn't have to, but it is put in there. It is one of the things that is part of the calibration procedure for the inertial reference unit. But it in itself to work does not need to know that. It simply detects. It's detecting something, right?
Yeah, I just compare it to, remember when we looked into the ideas of the accelerometer in the cell phone, and we basically realized that they input ahead of time the 9.8 meters per second squared, right? So you hold your phone up and you're not doing anything, the phone will tell you it's moving at 9.8 meters per second squared, because that's been pre-programmed into the phone. So, I just have some of the same questions about these gyros, is that I get it. And yeah, they have to set the plane straight and they don't want it to move before they want to get the rate of the movement of the ether. But I'm just wondering if those movements have been preset into those machines where you're basically tearing it, right? So just like when you have something on the scale and you tear it to get to zero, I'm just wondering if they're doing kind of the same idea. But I don't know. I mean,
I would love to field this question.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. Jeran, I want you to just visualize it a little bit differently. The fog and all of these things are optical machines. What they are doing is they are only measuring what light is doing. And this light is picked up in a constant rotation. Now I want you to just with a basic, take your right hand rule, put your thumb down at the North Pole. And it's almost like the right hand rule is following the pattern and the toroidal pattern, the rotation and the up and down from the North Pole. And it's picking up the light pattern. It's a French pattern, so when you say there's orientation count, yes, it does. You have to hold it completely perpendicular. So if you change the angle, you change how it comes in on. But it's not measuring anything tangible. It's measuring light, and it says it's doing that. It's measuring it by the French patterns created when you bounce it, and it's extremely, extremely accurate. But again, it's not measuring a physical item. It's measuring a light item. Now, when you look at the spinning gyroscope and the precession. Another way that I kind of look at it, and again, everybody looks at it differently, is when the physical item is rotating, if you think of Zach, for everybody that's watched Zach's dielectric inertial acceleration, if you think of the energy going between the two planes, jumping back and forth, and what we're calling that, if you spin an item quickly, it's not going to be able to line up, so it's going to precess. So you have two different things happening, I think, between the physical gyro and the light gyro, but the light or the fog is only picking up light, and so as soon as it's picking up the different light movements when you move it and change and interacting with it. Now we know exactly, we've measured so many times and so carefully how it is rotating it, but around us, and that is with the fog, and that measures, so that has to be calibrated in, and you take anything different from that is your movement. So
Okay.
on the light movement, but it's measuring the light movement, not the physical.
Right, and let me actually simplify that a little bit more. And I understand where you're going with that, Jeran, but when these experiments were originally done, they were done a little bit different, but the premise was identical. And this goes back to Michelson-Gale, Michelson-Morley, for the interferometer test. Now they weren't building in any set rotation rate or anything like that. All it was doing, in those things is they were looking at the interference pattern, the fringe, right? And if you understand, what that means when you put two different frequencies in something, you'll see like a fringe shift pattern. Okay, so this is what they did, back 100 plus years ago, and they were doing it through an optical device only. And you've seen me run that demonstration of Malcolm Boden's a million times, right? Mm-hmm. That all it's doing is it's picking up interferometry, and back then, of course, they didn't have computers, and yet they still picked up that exact same drift, right? So, but again, back then they were dealing entirely with the idea that the luminiferous ether absolutely did exist. There was no doubt about that in science whatsoever, and they knew full well that there was motion to it, right? Because again, Michelson-Gale showed that unequivocally. And again, you have to ask yourself, if the ballers, want so badly and so desperately to cling on to what, I reported with the fiber optic gyro, you would think that they would have gone back to a real scientist, right? Like, Michelson-Gale or Gale, that particular experiment, and said, okay, what's going on with that? They should be pointing at that and go, that is our smoking gun bulletproof that the Earth is rotating. Unfortunately, they were able to debunk that at the time, and then keeping the luminiferous ether model intact. When the Michelson-Morley experiment failed to pick up a 67,000 mile per hour rotation, well, then they had to come up with the Lorentz-Fitzgerald contraction and say, well, the measuring apparatus itself was actually shrinking by just that amount and thus offsetting it, which of course was patently absurd. And everybody back then, fully agreed that it was either that, which was a really stupid explanation, or the Earth was simply at rest. And so there you have it. And of course, that's a discussion that is still raging today, and they're doing everything, in their power to, still talk about what this background energy is. In fact, here I have an article here that I was going to show this to everybody. Right here. All right. So we have this new article from SciTech Daily that says, new model raises doubt about the composition of 70% of our universe. Dark energy may simply not exist. So what do they talk about? Well, what is it that replaces it? And it says, but because the cosmological constant known as dark energy cannot be measured directly, numerous researchers, including Einstein, have doubted its existence without being able to suggest a viable alternative. Until now, in a new study, research at the University of Copenhagen, a model that was tested that replaces dark energy, get this, with dark matter in the form of magnetic forces. In other words, the ether, right? Because remember, what is the ether? What are the modalities of the ether? magnetism, electricity, and so-called gravity or an acceleration. This is exactly what Ken Wheeler is talking about. So even though they want to call it something else, they're coming back to this very same concept, that it's there, it must be there, because light cannot propagate through nothing. It cannot wave nothing. There must be a medium there. Okay. And this is what this battle's about, right? And this is why Einstein was brought on the scene to basically debunk the idea of ether physics, because I think it would have taken us a lot further than the powers that be would have wanted us to be, for the time. And I think that we've been sidetracked greatly because of it. Any comments from anybody?
I think you're spot on. Keep going.
Okay. Well, and that's really all I can say about it. I mean, we did our experiments with fiber optic gyro. I would love to get, my hands on one. I want to do more experiments because there are other forms of ether.
You did all the experiments. You touched it yourself, and you paid $20,000.
Yeah, right. Well, no, actually, I didn't. I was present for the experiments, and I was only reporting on Rick Zimmerman's results. When I was speaking in Behind the Curve. So no, I had not even touched the fiber optic gyro at that point. When I said we, I was speaking collectively as FE Core, but it was actually Rick Zimmerman that did all the tests. Now, and admittedly, even when with Zach, Chris, and I and Cami went to Pikes Peak and Guanella Pass, I assisted Chris and Zach, and but Chris was primarily the person that was setting it up and sending the information back to Sandor, who is in the chat, by the way, and we got that data processed, and like I said, the flat earthers and the people that have looked at this data have confirmed exactly what I said is true, but they don't know what to make of it. They're not sure exactly what to think of it. So whatever. So it appears that we just didn't really go very far with that. Now, to me, it's a great big, not only did it prove that it wasn't the Earth rotating, which I think is the biggest thing, but I think it is a huge step in proving that the luminiferous ether is there, because it's just confirmation of several experiments besides the Michelson-Gale experiment that were handled over 100 years ago. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's, especially when you mention Honeywell, where I get interested is, remember we had that guy who was a pilot who flew basically halfway around the world or across the world, and his machine wasn't working right, but they just let him go. And then he asked if he could, get that fixed, and Honeywell won't let you even touch it. They won't let you even open their machinery, right?
Right.
Yeah. So then I have questions when we say things like everything, they're going to do everything in their power to get this right. Well, then I just look at it and I say, well, couldn't you create a device that has preset motions detected in it, so that anybody who takes this out and goes anywhere and inputs where they're at, it comes back with, yes, this is moving at this speed, this is moving at that speed, and you can zero it out. Don't get me wrong, it still will work if it's detecting motion to hit that tear button and basically set it at 0, and then from there, because it's basically saying, oh, you are moving this fast, but we'll set it at 0 because you're going to measure this. So that's all I'm saying, is that I wonder if it's really detecting anything at its rest point, because it can never show 0, right? It can't show, since it's basically, so we can either assume the Earth is always moving or that the ether is always moving, and then the device would never measure a standstill, correct?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
That's kind of my point. It doesn't.
And I totally get where you're coming from, because you're right about the accelerometers. You sit there, and if you sit there and you just hold, oh yeah, Chris put up a picture here. So let me bring that picture up. Thank you, Chris, for that. Let's
too, if I'm understanding Michelson-Morley correct, they're looking for this speed through the ether, right, or the ether drag, and found it to be much, much less than would be required of a orbiting Earth, correct?
Yes.
Right. Okay. And that just tells me that, and then they call that the most famous failed experiment. But then from there, because of this very small number, which if I remember correctly, was so small that it could be chalked up to experimental error. Doesn't necessarily mean even that the Earth is moving, because even if it's moving at the speed they detected, it's tiny. So it can't be around the sun, and it can't be around the Milky Way and everything else. So then, because of that, they had to introduce Lorentz transformation and special relativity, right? So any future device ever created would, of course, include those preset determinations, right? I mean, you would have to, if you're going to build a device, if you built it just as it was, if you just built a device to measure, well, then it would do what the Michelson-Morley experiment did, which is not detect it. So you have to add things into it so it does detect it. So to me, these gyros, and I don't have the technical prowess to look into them. I'm not an engineer, but I just doubt whether or not if they have a outcome they are looking for, then I think you'd be able to input those things, and they wouldn't even look at it as if they're lying. It's not like the people building the machine are like, oh, we're deceiving people. They've been told these things are fact. Lorentz transformation, special relativity, here's the equations, so then that's built into the machine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. No. And you're right. You're right. They absolutely could do that. And the only reason that I'm saying that, and look, one thing we do know, and you are absolutely right about this too, when you looked into the gravimeter, for example, they plug in all these different filters, right, which alter the outcome, and it really, really muddies the basic function of the gravimeter itself. And that in its most basic function does nothing more than measure the acceleration of an object being dropped through a vacuum, right? That's the pure simplest way that it operates. But like you said, and when I looked into it, you're absolutely right. They have all these filters, all these corrections, if you will, to compensate for this, that, or the other thing. And it just seems extremely convoluted. But when you get back to the basic function of the interferometer, simply measuring just that downward acceleration, that's what it's supposed to do, and that's the one thing that still seems to be in variance, in several places around the world. So there you have it. You can make of that what you want.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I mean, you have a very valid point in what you're saying, and I don't blame you for being suspicious, especially with the amount of deceit that is going on around all of this.
And again, I'm not even saying it would be deception, purposeful deception on anybody's fault. I mean, this is the problem when you have certain incorrect foundations and science builds upon those things, right? Because if the scientific community as a whole agrees that something is true or that some formula is correct, then anything going forward from there is going to include those things, and you're just going to get further and further away from the truth, but it will still look correct to those who believe in the premise, those who believe in the foundation are going to always assume it's correct. So nobody's actually even lying. It's, hey, we need to build this machine that can, determine any slightest movement. And then someone's gonna say, oh, well, if you do that, you have to include all these other factors because they go into it, your transformation, that these things get, so then they kind of minus out those things. And so, yeah, if you set the machine down and you have it turned on or whatever, then it's going to detect what it's meant to detect, plus the equations that have already been put in it. So, because it's not just a simple, it's basically shooting light inside of it around either a circle or a basically off mirrors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so from there, it's not like it just outputs exactly what it's finding. It goes through a process that we don't know the process.
Yes, it does output exactly what it's doing. It does it as a visual. It does it as a visual fringe pattern. You can get it to reflect as a fringe pattern, and you can see it's an optical effect. When you're looking at the digital spit out, all it's doing is taking the optical effect and changing it to a digital readout. It is doing that, but you read it physically as a fringe pattern in light.
Right. So how do you know from the fringe pattern the speed that supposedly things are moving?
You would know by how far, in other words, it's separating the beam of light into two beams, and you're seeing that as you're rotating it, how far apart the fringes are. Again, it's an optical effect. It's an optical light effect.
Right. You can tell it.
Go
You
ahead.
can tell it. You can tell it basically by when you have higher and lower light frequencies. Then certain nodes are going to cancel out, and others are going to become additive. And this is a technology that is used in a lot of things. So I mean, it's not even unusual or anything like that. And I think somebody just popped in.
This would be, if it's Baldini, he would be perfect to explain the resonance patterns and the fringe patterns it's picking up.
Yeah, what I'm just saying is
It's Rodrigo.
that if you are looking at
How's it going?
if you are looking at that difference or the fringe pattern, what I'm saying is, how do you translate the fringe pattern to speed? Who's doing that calculation?
That I don't know.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So we are taking their word for it to take what the optical results are, and then it's going through some filter that we don't get a preview of that, and then it outputs a so-called speed, and that's where we're getting the numbers where Bob's saying, oh, when we go up to this height, we're getting a difference of 1 or 2%. So none of us are determining that. The machine itself is outputting a speed.
That's true,
Okay.
but I will say in the machine's defense, I'm defending a machine here, is the fiber optic gyro has no idea what latitude or longitude it's at, especially in this configuration that we've got. So here we have it. It's sitting here. We've aligned it to north. Here we have it sitting on the ground next to a laptop. And then we've got it sitting here, and we're trying to keep things at a regulated temperature. I think these are little ice packs and stuff like that, so we can keep the temperature regulated. And the fiber optic gyro itself has no idea where it is in this configuration, latitude or longitude. The only person that knows where it is us, because we've taken it. Therefore, but nevertheless, the gyro is still picking up a very large variance in this spin, right? And that would not happen if this was a globe. Simply wouldn't. It couldn't, because it doesn't register motion that way. So, any comments, Chris?
I think somebody asked me, it's like, well, they put them in aircraft and they go up to 35,000, 40,000 feet, but all those aircraft are under, they're pressurized. The cabins are pressurized, so it still thinks that it's on the ground.
Yeah, that's true. Now the reference unit that it's a part of obviously has all of that data, and it has barometric pressure, it has latitude, longitude, all that stuff. But that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here excludes all of that. Okay, there is nothing that lets this gyroscope know where it is or when it is. And again, as expected, it did precisely as we predicted it that it would, if it was in fact registering this luminiferous ether, that we've been talking about all this time. And it did not, and I repeat, did not act like it was on a globe, meaning that should have never changed whatsoever if it was on a globe rotating around. So that to me is very, very conclusive. I think that's kind of a dead giveaway. And again, we also have Aries failure, to back that up. And in addition to today's accelerometers simply do not pick up any of these motions of perihelion or aphelion or anything like that. Things that are angular motions are accelerations that we absolutely positively should be able to not only measure but predict when they're going to happen according to where we are in the celestial system, right? And that doesn't happen. We've never been able to measure it. And these accelerometers are easily sensitive enough to measure this stuff, right? So again, Glober's got nothing. And this technology is very much working against them.
And I want to add in on Jeran too, when you say who determines the speed in the formula, I'm sure I can look at the formulas and make sense of it, but the formula is just a differential between the mediums. In other words, a bounce back rate that takes to get from one spot to another and bounce back to you through air, through water, through a crystal, through, in other words, your different mediums are going to produce a different amount of time it takes to bounce. So when you're saying who
And that
determines
machine-
that's programmed into it, but this has all been done in analog long before it's been done in digital and the machines. In other words, this has all been done in, I know what you're saying, but it's been done on rotating a mirror on mirrors on a turntable and that. It's
and it has never proven globe rotation ever. And it can't. And this is exactly why, when it was put to the test in Michelson-Morley, that they had to come up with such utter bullshit excuses, right? Because this thing was about ready to cut their nuts off, essentially, in this model. So they had to come up with this absolutely outrageous fairy tale about the Lorentz, contraction.
Well, I mean, because basically it's measuring, it's pretending to measure. So if you asked a glober, they would say, oh, well, Bob proved it because it's measuring a 15-degree turn per hour. But
in light.
Yeah, in light. But I continue on. I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So, and then it doesn't measure any other movement, though. All the other movements going on, it doesn't measure any of that.
Oh, but it does. No, it does. In fact, that's the whole purpose of it. So if I one day
as the Earth flies through space.
Oh no, it doesn't measure any of that. Nope, not one iota. It has absolutely nothing.
And that alone is ridiculous, right? I mean, that alone is the reason that we know that it's bullshit.
That's absolutely correct. And remember, now the difference between the two is one measures angular motion, and there's UAP just jumped in, so he's probably going to have something to say. One measures angular motion, right? And this is the Michelson-Gale device, the Sagnac device measures angular motion, and then the other one, Michelson-Morley, measures linear velocity, which is why we were using a Michelson-Morley to try and determine the path around the sun, because that is essentially, even though it is angular in a huge 186 million mile thing, it's for all practical purposes a linear motion.
At the time, it would be linear.
Right.
A day or a month or even.
Bob, and sorry, I'm late. I had no idea it was late, actually. I thought it was you guys just starting. But one question here, doesn't it also measure some differences when you move it around in different altitudes and different positions as well?
It does. Yes, it absolutely does on every axis, and it does it extremely precisely. That's the amazing thing about it. But yes, but we cannot, but that drift, that luminiferous ether drift has got to be calibrated out, and that's part of what the inertial reference unit itself does. That is that secret mysterious module that Jeran was talking about, that the pilots said, well, nobody will, Honeywell won't let anybody touch that. And who's it made by? NASA, right? Well, gee, what a surprise, right? So that's exactly what that is doing, is that's calibrating out the ether rotation.
And that would change, right? Depending on the position, that 15-degree drift, it's not exactly the number, right? It would be different depending on where you put it and the altitude and all that.
Exactly. It would be the sine of the latitude times 15 degrees per hour. So in Colorado, it was probably closer to 11. Does that sound about right, Chris?
Yeah, that sounds pretty close, Bob.
Yep. So yeah. So, we totally had it, down. We knew what we were doing. We did everything, by the numbers. And some people had made the case, have tried to claim, that there's a thermistor unit in there that's basically heat sensitive, and also that, well, it's pressure sensitive. And my response to that would be, come on, guys, do you really think that KVH would put out a device that was meant to be used from under the ocean to 100,000 feet or better, all in that vastly varying pressure differential, and that it would be absolutely crushed or disabled by the pressure differential in the environment that it's meant to be used for? Of course they wouldn't. That's just stupid, right? Same thing goes for temperature raising. I mean, the unit itself is hermetically sealed, and I'm not saying that there might be some pressure differential that might affect it, but nothing that would be outside of what the manufacturer didn't already plan for, right? So, because honestly, it would be really stupid for a manufacturer to put something out that would be completely wrecked by the environment that it was being used in. That doesn't make any sense, right?
So where I'm still lost is that, okay, so if it's a 15 degree per hour that it's measuring, and that would be true no matter where you were at then on Earth, meaning that if you were in Alaska or you were in Florida or you were in Brazil, right?
Well, not necessarily, because again, remember I said 15 times the sine of the latitude.
That's
so
what I mean. But the sine times the sine of the latitude, who's doing that mathematics?
Oh, we did.
Right. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. So then if we didn't do any mathematics, then it's measuring 15 degrees no matter where you are.
Is it?
I'm asking. I don't know. I'm not saying. I'm asking the question.
Yeah, because I had the same question, because I know the output is based on the calculation, right?
Yeah.
This is UAP, by the way, if anybody doesn't recognize. But yeah, that it's the output, and so what goes into the equation, what is in the input, we don't know. It's just a differential. It's just a differential.
And I would say no, Jeran, because of the fact that it does not know what latitude, longitude, or elevation it's at when it's being tested.
Right. So let's pretend that we're not going to tell it any of that stuff. We're just going to go out with the machine and test. What I'm saying is, wouldn't it always come back 15 degrees per hour because we've never put in where we're at? Now, when we do, if we say, oh, by the way, we're in Florida and we have to do the calculation, and then we do the calculation and it comes out to actually it's 11 degrees or whatever you said, that was what it was where you were at. If that's the case, then how do we know it's not preset to determine a 15 degree move per hour?
Well,
how would we be able to because it never measures zero. You can't go.
No, that's true. It doesn't measure zero. You're right, and you raise a good point. And honestly, to be completely honest, I can't say that it would act like that everywhere in the world because we didn't test it everywhere in the world. But since this piece of equipment is used for navigation all over the world, you would have to assume that it would be accurate within those boundaries.
Well, and I think it's super accurate. I think it's a very accurate device. What I'm saying is if it's preset to do a 15 degree rotation per hour, then that would be preset everywhere you went, which is why when this plane gets ready to leave and it's asking, hey, we need to reset this, but it's not working, and they eventually just say, go ahead, it would be because you don't really need to reset it so much, is because maybe they can determine, oh, well, you're at this location and you'll be fine. We know where you're going. You're going to get there just fine.
I get that. And again, my only response to that is simply to go back to Michelson-Gale and say 100 years ago, they did not have the technology to compensate for that, to automatically insert numbers like that. And they still picked up a rotational rate. So I don't know what to say. I don't know what else,
I got you. I'm just trying to determine, that much of it. Because I'm trying to also think if there's a way to prove, because I mean, the one difference that we really have about the globe Earth versus the flat Earth that I still think there's an experiment here we just haven't thought of is the idea of the difference between the North Pole and South Pole in both models, right? So we've already pretty much determined if there was a way we could determine if a person was going straight, then you would be able to determine whether the Earth was a globe or flat in the simple fact that if somebody's on the south and they go directly east, on a globe, you'd have to turn to the right. On a flat Earth, you'd have to turn to the left. So that's undeterminable. We know that because once you get up in an airplane, if you're following GPS, you would never know whether the plane's turning right or left at all. You wouldn't be able to determine that. So in a test like this, I'm just wondering, you would think if this thing was really measuring the spin of the Earth, then you would be able to get very close to the North Pole with it. And as you got to the North Pole, your speed should be reduced to a very, very small speed, right? And if you went to the South Pole, it should also be reduced to a very small speed. But on a flat Earth, if you went to the south, you should get a completely different rate, right?
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to determine if there's a way to figure that out. If this thing gives me a 15 degree base, no matter where I go, then it wouldn't help me at all.
Right. And that's one of the things that and I honestly have not heard from these producers in a while about this television show. The last I heard from them, they basically said, fill out your dream list for your tests, and we're going to go that way. But I haven't heard from them since, and I don't know if it has anything to do with our friend that's causing trouble out of this. But I don't know. But that's something that would be great to get another one and do some more, measurements with it, because, that's, like I said before, there are other things that supposedly affect this ether, right? The ether comes in many forms. They call the chi that goes in and out of your body, your life energy. Chi is actually a form of ether. They call these things that Chris Pontius builds, the chembusters, right? The orgone generators. Those are supposedly a form of the luminiferous ether. And I'm thinking to myself, ooh, I want to go get one of those things from Chris Pontius and put the fiber optic gyro directly in its path and see what happens, because I've seen what happens when you put one of those chembusters out, like he makes. It's weird, but it all of a sudden makes this clearing, this large clearing above the device up in the sky from the chemtrails itself.
I did that without a device. Bob.
You did that without a device?
I did it without a device. I'm not going to say any more than that because I don't want to sound crazy. I'm just telling you what happened.
Already sounds crazy.
All right.
But I'm telling you what happened. I did something without a device. It was mostly thought. All I'm telling you is the facts. I should have recorded. I did record some of it, but for 4 days, there was there was a spot over my house of blue sky. And then when I would drive and go do errands, it didn't follow me. It stayed at the house. But I could see where my house was looking at the sky from somewhere else in the city. It was incredible.
Okay, now I'm dying to find out what you did.
I don't want to sound too crazy.
I was going to ask you, Bob, about the measurement. When you look at this drift, the said drift, does it oscillate? Does it change at all? Or is it a continuous, absolutely constant?
It definitely oscillates. I mean, you have to remember that this is such a sensitive instrument that, honestly, if a fly pulled up next to it and farted, it would probably pick it up. You know what I mean?
Did you do the test with the plasma ball? Did you run it next to a plasma ball? No,
I didn't. Okay. Nope. That would be an interesting one. See, I mean,
we have the plasma ball here, just not the bug.
A lot of options, but Bob, when I hear 15 degrees per hour, the reason that bothers me is because it doesn't take into account any kind of speed, right? So I mean, what you're saying is that the device close to the North Pole would measure 15 degrees per hour, at the equator 15 degrees per hour, at the South Pole 15 degrees per hour. But what if the Earth were 1 million miles in diameter? Then no matter how far, let's say it's flat too. It's flat and 1 million miles in diameter. No matter how far out we went to the south, you're always going to get 15 degrees an hour. So, but can't it measure the speed? Can it measure the speed of the ether? Because if you went to the south and it was 1 million miles out, that speed of the ether would be much faster.
It could be, but it would have to be run through filter and an algorithm to extrapolate that data. But as far as the raw data that's put out by the fog itself, no, it doesn't do that.
Okay.
So, yeah, and like I said, there's a lot you can do with it, and that's why I wish we, still had one, and I want to get another one, because there's so many more things I think that it can tell us. And even if we had to do a GoFundMe, to rent one of these for a while, and I know that the FE Core, we had a company that was going to loan us one for a while, and then of course COVID hit and everything went to hell. So I don't know exactly where we are on that, but it was actually even a much nicer one, much better one. They were going to loan us for like 30 days, but that I think got shelved because of COVID. And COVID just screwed up everything. It really did. But what do we do? Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So, so that's basically it, that we want to say about that. Obviously, there's a lot more tests to be done. I suppose the best thing you can say is that it's inconclusive, and it all depends on who's looking at it too, because in my eyes, it conclusively proved that Earth rotation does not exist. And I think that the data supports that very well. And in fact, the people that did the analysis, came to the exact same conclusion. But they also said that, they're also thinking along the lines of you, Jeran, well, what if it's just put in there? What if it's just programmed in there, like that 9.8 meters per second squared acceleration that we know is built into the accelerometers? I mean, and I get that, because, and in a way, you almost have to have that in there, because If we're correct and this acceleration actually exists, right, then they're correcting putting it in there, because if you drop it, then it will take away from that acceleration, kind of like putting it on a 0G plane. So it's all in how you look at it, right?
Right.
So
I don't know, because I mean, I don't think that adding just that one rotation covers the problems with the solar system, like you're mentioning before.
it doesn't.
There's too many motions at the same time. Those have to be there.
Well, that's why they don't use. This is why only the globe believers on YouTube consider this as proof of Earth spin. This is why you never saw in the early 1900s. You never saw. You heard Einstein say that there is no experiment that can determine that the Earth's moving. So he was around when that. Why didn't he just say, "Oh, there's the experiment that proves it"? Because he knew it didn't. Now, these guys who love to watch movies and think that Behind the Curve is like some sort of a educational documentary. Those are the ones that grab onto it and think it proves something.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah, objectively, it proves that there's laser interference that is adjustable, and it shows that we're on a stationary, immovable plane with Cartesian coordinates that don't change, and there's an isometric ethereal rotation that occurs everywhere just about equally, unless it's influenced by some other field, some other anomaly or whatever. Like if it changes, I don't know, if you hold it next to something like a neodymium magnet or something, if that changes it or not.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, it does? Yeah.
Yeah. When we say it doesn't change, though, UAP, where I'm a little bit lost still is that if we did get close to the North Pole, that speed would be down to 100 miles per hour. And if we got to the Antarctic edge on a flat Earth, that speed would be closer to 3,000 miles per hour. So you're talking about there a 300 times difference. Well, even infinite, really. If you got close to the North Pole, you would get close to zero. So if in both those locations, the machine returns 15 degrees per hour, because I get it, the sky would move in 15 degrees per hour no matter where you were at. I'm just wondering, if it can determine that, then how can it not determine the speed?
I think it's an interesting question, because there's one thing as well that I'm just wondering about, because in the northern hemisphere, maybe you pick up, you're still in sight of the polar star, but if you're far away south, it'd be interesting to see if there's a difference, just because of that as well, because you don't pick the center of the rotation. What do you pick then?
Yeah. Well, I don't have an answer. I looked into it, and all of the experiments with the data shown and the studies that I could find were in northern latitudes. It was really odd that there were only a couple studies done in southern latitudes, and they interpolated, or they interpreted the data. They summarized the data, but they didn't provide the raw data in the studies that I looked at.
Weird.
Right. And Sandor is, of course, saying fog cannot tell the speed, and he's absolutely right. That's something that would have to be extrapolated by adding, some math and filters to the raw data output. But here's the thing, guys, and all of this, in my opinion, is a smoke screen anyway, because who just joined us? Hang on a second. Baldini.
Welcome.
Hey, Baldini.
Hey, how are you? Sorry I'm late. I was double booked today. It's a big day.
No worries. So yeah, we're just kind of talking about this, and say hello to everybody. And everybody got the Great Baldini with us.
Hello, everybody. I don't know who all's here, but hello, everybody.
Hello,
Okay.
Baldini. Check your
Hello.
microphone. It's not as good as it usually
Hello.
is. See which figure you're on.
Yeah, I always seem to have trouble with StreamYard specifically. That's why I don't use it. But hopefully that works. If it's a little muffled, they'll try to open up the top end a little bit. Give you a little.
Yeah,
bit
it sounds a little muffled.
Okay.
What's going on with that? But all right. So anyway, back to what I was going to say, and this is why focusing on this is really crazy, because guys, every single day, and Morgile knows this. We've talked about this a lot. If we're rotating 1,024 miles an hour, and we are supposedly going at 67,000 miles an hour around the sun, every single day, within 12 hours, we're going to have a variance of 2,000 miles per hour. And that's not a linear variance. It's an angular variance. And believe me, guys, even the cheesiest accelerometer is going to be able to pick that up. because they'll sit there and say, oh, well, yeah, you can't really feel it because, if you're 200 pounds, you might get a swing of a gram and a half. Well, you know what? That gram and a half is more than enough for the accelerometer to pick up. And again, this happens twice a day. We would also have substantially larger accelerations happening on perihelion, aphelion, when the sun is, or the Earth is supposedly in these positions around the sun. And then, mind you, these things become additive, right? So again, not only should we be able to measure them, but we should be able to predict precisely when they will happen. Not only can they not predict it, they can't measure it. They never could measure it. And if they're going to sit there and try and snowball us by telling us that the equipment isn't sensitive enough, I'm going to say they're full of shit.
Well, I mean, really, look at it. This is the way I look at it, man. Okay, so humor in the ball Earth theory, you've got the orbital velocity of the Earth around the sun, which is 66,000 miles an hour. When the sun's rising, okay, humor in the ball Earth model, you should be like basically on the nose of speeding bullet Earth, right? Then 12 hours later, say thereabouts, you would be on the tail of speeding bullet Earth. And there you would have a variance of 66,000 miles an hour in one direction to the polar opposite 12 hours later, 66,000 miles an hour in the opposite direction. That's an acceleration of over 130,000 miles an hour. And you would think that the accelerometer would pick that up too, wouldn't you?
You would think.
So it's the equivalent of us going to like a teacup ride, right, at Disneyland, and us sitting this gyro on the cup that we're in. And we say, okay, we're going to just rotate this once every 24 hours. And then everything else going on the teacup ride, you're getting swung on a moving platform, you're getting swung to the outer edge. All that's not figured out. The gyro only measures the teacup that we're in and its little slight turning. That's insane to me.
Right.
Yeah, very. And I mean, so basically, I mean, if I'm picking up properly here, what we're talking about is the angular momentum and the angular velocity, right?
Yes.
And so ultimately, I mean, keep in mind that from a continuous, like if the whole thing is continuous, as we're told that it is, I don't like to humor their model very much, but if we take a look at it, right, so that you get the velocity vector, it's the sum of all the constituent parts. So it would be extensive. I mean, even the 132,000 miles an hour that Jon mentions, right, is actually pales in the comparison. Is if you actually add up all the constituent parts,
right,
it's all of it. And so it gets into ridiculous numbers.
Wait, we got to solve the three-body problem first.
Right.
I can actually do it with all the moons of Saturn. I'll do it right now.
Oh
Yeah,
God.
in my head.
Do it right now if you guys want to see it. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of the three-body problem, you are not going to believe. Let me actually pull this up. So I was talking to the I Can Science That guy, and one of the things I said to him, when they were so proudly saying that the heliocentric model could prove everything, right? Everything fell into place with the heliocentric. So our conversation is in this video right here, chatting with Rob about relative density. And of course, here at the very top, we've got this whole thing going on. And let's see, it wasn't in this comment, but it was down here. Where I simply said that you had many things wrong in your discussion as well. One of the most blatant lies you guys told is that your prediction model using gravity conforms to the heliocentric theory. The fact is that you cannot even solve a three-body problem, and anyone who says they can is a liar, right? So you know what his response is to me? And I couldn't believe this. He comes back and he says, okay, I'll ask you not to claim that we are lying in regards to the heliocentric model. It would appear that we have a different interpretation of what it means when we say our prediction model uses gravity conforms to the heliocentric theory. Yeah, I'd say a huge freaking difference, pal. In my interpretation, it conforms. I'll grant you the option of taking some other interpretation, but you're going to have to explain yourself in detail. You do not get to call us liars for that. And before you do, be aware that an analytic solution to the three-body problem is not required. We do not need that. We usually use a one-body simplification or a two-body when called for. But when we need more detail, we use a numerical simulation. So what he's saying here in his freaking word salad is that, nope, we can't do it. You're right, but we don't need to, because we can't do it. Well, we don't need to. But nevertheless, our heliocentric predictions about the gravitational behavior of the universe and everything in it, Halley's Comet, all that, it pans out 100%, and you don't have a model that does that. You know, I mean, this is the level of dishonesty, and I thought this guy was actually going to be honest, but I was wrong.
Nobody that I know in this industry uses the so-called scientific method.
Yeah.
This
guy's an aerospace engineer, right?
Yeah.
And the guy he's talking to is a astronomy professor. But yeah, I was kind of following this along because he was, going over the whole Ricci sleeping warrior, relative density disequilibrium model. And I was thinking, finally, somebody's going to put some sense to this. But, and I told him, I said, look, it would be great if we could actually come together on some points. But, when they're not even willing to accept something, like that is as obvious as a three-body problem, it's like, what is the point, right? We're not going to get anywhere with them.
Bob, I don't know if you knew that I got into a long conversation with Scott Manley over emails. I think it was about a year and a half ago, because I did a video where I kind of made some fun of his stuff, and he did a manual strike attempt on me, and YouTube sided with me because it was just commentary and parody and all that good stuff. And then they asked me if I wanted to counter strike him, and they would do it. And I didn't do it. I didn't do that. Or no, actually they said also that I could file a lawsuit. Cool. But I'm not interested in doing that. I'm not like that. I just told him, hey, if you want to talk offline, let's talk. And, I just care about the truth. And he's like, you don't know the truth. So I did a bunch of emails. I think it was like 20, 25 emails back and forth. And it was just like what you showed. But I even went further because we got into the gravitational thing. And I said, you really can't show an experiment where any two things attract each other by gravity. It's not something you can replicate in a lab. And then they came out with the Cavendish, and I said, the Cavendish is balderdash. And then he showed some studies where he said these are studies with data showing that attraction. And I took a look at them, and by the time I deciphered them, and it came down to the fact of that the gravitational attraction between the things in the laboratory was so small that they had variables in there accounted for that were so much larger than the attractive force. Mm-hmm. It included light pressure.
Nice.
And wow. So I said, you're basing all of your entire cosmology belief off of something that is only experimentally shown by something where the data that is critical is not even statistically significant, but it's overshadowed by something called light pressure.
That's absurd.
Which if anybody knows, that's the belief that light is firing photons that are smacking into things and pushing on them with pressure, kind of like air pressure. So
there was a recent article showing what's the weight of a shadow based on this same idea. It's poppycock.
Yeah, well, the ground would be bubbling up because it's not being pushed as much in the shadow as it's just ridiculous. And so, I'm like, it's the force is so weak that, you're not really telling me honestly that that's being shown in the lab, but he just is choosing to believe it. because it all comes down to that ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to put that notion to bed a little bit later on as far as the bumping particles when we pull out the Polaroid filters and start adding multiple fields, because the little particles and pressures and bumping can't work with reality, and we're going to demonstrate why a little bit later on, so it's fun that you say that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yep.
because we talked about it a little bit before. I'm glad that you're still looking at that because it predicates that type of thing. Just the fact of it being there also outweighs the experimental value that you're looking at. The whole thing. It's like the Voyager signal. Nobody can tell me that the inverse square law with the wattage of that broadcast signal can be sifted out from the background noise. Nobody can tell me that. You can't achieve any kind of statistical significant number, much less discern radio signals from distances like that to be able to remote start and retask liquid fueled engines to point a satellite to be able to receive the signal in the first place that you're sending. It's so
every bit of it is just nonsense. I mean, the very idea that they could have had a craft that could go through and survive the rigors of what they say space is, 10 to the minus 17 torr vacuum with wild swings of temperature, like 2,300 degrees either way, Fahrenheit, plus radiation and all that sort of stuff, and work flawlessly for 40 years.
yeah.
I can't even, you can't even get the best, most precision machine tools that we use in our industry. They don't go a year without being recalibrated and dialed in. And that's here.
That's right. And also the idea of remote control, that like I've been thinking about the remote control, and verifiably everything I've seen anybody ever do with remote control, they're literally within sight of it. And I was looking at these remote guided missiles, and in some videos I saw, they were flying chaser planes behind them, and that made me start thinking that all this business we've been taught, all the Cold War kids, of what they can do, they can't do that remote control from far away with any kind of like accuracy and reliability, and so what they do is they fly jets behind them when they're doing the demonstrations and things like that. So I think no matter how you look at it, just remote controlling something on the moon, or like that camera, if you ever saw the camera pan up as they took off and the lunar lander, and the camera pans up, and they said,
they anticipated it. Yeah, they anticipated it by about 3 seconds to account for.
Yeah. And
all the explanations are so ad hoc, it's ridiculous.
And Jeran's video that showed, there's a great video, by the way, just a wake up video of the Devon Island and the Mars rovers there, and they don't look like the ones because they overlay them, but what they were using to drive around there, supposedly just practicing, but they were remote controlling those things in the photos from about 20 feet away. Is the actual distance of remote controlling the rovers,
Yep, exactly. So, okay. All right, guys. So basically, now that Baldini's here, we can kind of launch into this footage that Chris started. Now, before we do that, I want to say, first of all, as I've said before, this proposition that we are putting forward is designed, assumed around a flat Earth model. In addition to that, it's designed, assumed around a flat Earth model with a firmament. Now, as far as what exactly the firmament, shape is, whether or not it's a dome or a bunt pan type thing or a straight thing, I don't know. But the idea is that we're playing with optics here. Well, so a lot of people are going to come out and say, first of all, well, what kind of proof do you have that there is even a firmament? And to that, I'm like, oh, give me a break. Are you serious? Well, first of all, because if we didn't have a dome over the top of us, we would be in violation again of the second law of thermodynamics. We couldn't have a pressurized system. And that in and of itself tells you that we are in a container. That's just one part of it. Okay. Another piece of evidence that there's something over the top of us is something that I find highly suspicious that astronomers have been doing, apparently for quite some time. But, I said that I believe that the firmament, the apex of it, or at least on average, is probably somewhere right up around 100 kilometers. So 62, 65 miles, something like that. So what do we have up there at 60 to 65 miles, et cetera? Well, in addition to having documents like this, which are put out by the CIA, right? And I've got this, I put these out before, I have all these things where they are telling us that they are they're going to measure the brightness of the firmament, right? Talks about how they're going to do that. This whole thing is about that. The light characteristics of the firmament. And, they're not just speaking of some willy-nilly thing, no matter what you globers want to come up with. They're outright calling it a firmament, and everything they are describing here fits perfectly into that description. Well, that's one thing, all right? Then we have something that I find astounding, and that the fact that astronomers use a technology where they are able to create a low magnitude or a high brightness star. And the reason for that is so that they can have a calibrated light source so that they can modulate the mirror on the telescope to essentially offset the atmospheric distortions and modulations that are taking place in the atmosphere from things rising, heat rising, whatever might be going on, right? So what they do is they say they fire these 45-watt lasers up to this natural global layer called the sodium layer, right? And when they do that, they can get a sustained, very bright star out of it that they can calibrate it with. Well, that's crazy. If you think about that, it's like, what in the hell? What in the world could possibly do that? Not only that, they say that it's something like 8 miles thick or something like that. 3 miles thick, excuse me. 3 miles thick, right? So we're getting these extremely precise looking stars. They don't look like they're, going back 3 miles in depth or anything like this. And yet all they're doing, the only thing they're doing is they're hitting them with a laser at a specific light wave frequency, and bada bing, instant star. Wow. That to me sounds an awful lot like there's something up there that is absorbing that charge, and I seriously doubt it's sodium. Okay. So what else do we have that kind of gives us these hints?
Well, one thing Bob was going to just mention, the question of the firmament and the having a container or not. There's something they call atmospheric escape, and you can find it in Wikipedia. And essentially, what that is the escape of planetary atmospheric gases into outer space. So it's a kind of erosion, they claim. So yeah, they're saying that gas is coming out of all the planets and then is getting replenished somehow. So there's no need for a container.
Right.
Well,
escape.
That's interesting, because I just learned about pilots having trouble and mechanics with extremely low altitude, low temperature issues with flights all over the world ever since a few years ago, I think. It's a new phenomenon.
And if I could just real quickly kind of toss in this, because I know there's going to be people who squeal pretty loudly about, the model, flat Earth model, oh dear, pearl collection. Again, if you're asking us to give some, hypothesis and, entertain the idea of a globe model as we debunk it, Again, what's wrong with the little hypothesis saying, do we have proof? I don't know. There's very little proof for everything, but is there an enormous amount of empirical evidence? Yes. And so if you're going to go with preponderance of evidence, why not hypothesize and speculate a little bit with what you have to work with? It's the evidence that we have, and overall there is a dearth of evidence. There's data anemia. So why not work with what you have? But again, that's my take on it. Is there absolute proof? I don't think I can make the claim of absolute proof. Is there an enormous amount of evidence that works way better than the preposterous model that the heliocentrics give us? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And
this is funny about they talk about every different planet, how much atmospheric escape they have. The Earth, it's about 3 kilos a second of hydrogen that goes off and 5 grams a second of helium, they claim.
Right. Well, and in theory, in order for that to even be able to happen, theoretically, they're supposed to be able to hit that gas has to hit an escape velocity of Mach 33, which of course is 25,000 miles an hour. Now, so here's the thing, and again, there's where they don't take this into consideration. Well, what about the fact that we're already bolting around at 67,000 miles an hour, 500,000 miles an hour, 1.2 million miles an hour? That should rip our atmosphere off right there.
Of course,
we have a conglomerate speed of over 2 million miles an hour. Nothing should be able to hold on to it, right?
They're trying to patch the problem, right? With a little bit of, there's just a little bit of escape. It happens in this rate. Look at the rates. I mean,
always be that hot. And I was surprised at that, 5 grams. It's like, why not 5.4, right? We'd be super specific, right?
3 kilos a second of hydrogen. Where'd they get this?
Per second, right? We're just going to, again, almost always what they do is they try to put some jargon around it to make it seem like, oh, we really know. Then they don't. It's always ad hoc explanations. It's always going to be a yeah, but every single time. Yeah, but gravity.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, going back to the evidence, and I do mean evidence, right? We know they can make those laser guide stars. We've seen these spectacular discharges, and I can't play that video, unfortunately, because they'll copyright strike me. But these things, these elves and sprites, are basically going up, and they're discharging in an upward direction. Well, first of all, according to electrical theory, in order for that to happen, there has to be a difference of potential. There has to be a difference of charge potential for that to even happen. And beyond that, here's the really anomalous part. Not only do we get upward discharges that seem to flatten out right at 100 kilometers, but they flatten out like they are absolutely striking something. Right. So it's like, what is that? What is it at 100 kilometers that the elves are hitting? Exactly. So there has to be something in charge potential. I'm calling that the firmament. I'm saying that's where it is. It is a charge potential. It is what they're hitting with lasers that have this permeability that to holding a light, to creating these artificial stars. We've got that. We have much more than that, right? So government documents.
We're going to rename it the Van Halen radiation belt and call it an eruption.
Yeah, it's amazing. So here we have, they occur in the ionosphere at 100 kilometers, 62 miles above the ground over thunderstorms. Well, we know where the one charge potential is coming from, obviously the thunderclouds, right, that they're discharging up through. But again, you cannot have a current flow unless there is something there to act as an anode for the circuit. This is a basic electronics 101, folks. And the fact that these guys can look at this and say that, well, it's doing it on a sodium layer is ridiculous. It's just crazy.
The sodium layer that wasn't there in the 80s or 90s when they were flying up with the shuttle. It started appearing when the CGI got updated.
Yeah, Planck would kick him right in the balls for that idea.
Yeah.
What are you retarded? Yeah, there's no way.
Right, and then we also
do this. They avoid the basic laws, just like you mentioned earlier, the inverse square law. They keep telling us about all these broadcasts that they get from all the way across the universe. And if you just look at the inverse square law, it's impossible. Not just highly unlikely or probable, but impossible. It cannot be done. But again, it falls apart at every place. There's just so many cards out there that the house of cards, even if it falls, it's such a big pile of stuff at this point.
Yeah.
People they're just hypnotized.
Exactly. And then they give us this. And of course, I believe that the distance on this is complete horseshit, what they're saying. But, they talk about this being something that is absolutely physical, right? It has the characteristics of being absolutely physical. This Star Trek type invisible shield, thousands of miles above the Earth. They say this is 7,200 miles up, but of course, we know that they can't get to that. And so this is one of those things that they're simply exaggerating. But the bottom line is even if it wasn't there, what is this, right? What is this thing that's supposedly at 7,200 miles up that exhibits crystalline type of characteristics, like it's actually there? It's almost like these electrons are running into a glass wall in space, right? This is what they're saying about this. So, and then we also have very interesting propagation anomalies that seem to occur right at the 100-kilometer level, where RF geometry seems to take a radical change, almost like it was bouncing off of something. And I don't think it's the ionosphere, which of course is quite a bit lower, right? But, and that of course the ionosphere was something that was simply manufactured when they realized that these transmissions they were putting up back at the turn of the century, were going way further than the curve of the Earth was supposedly allowing them to go, right? So this is all I'm saying, guys, is that, you ask me, oh, were you just pulling this firmament out of your butt? No, I'm not. There's evidence for it, and I could go on with more evidence, but these are a few of the highlights to say why we are going this direction, because I believe the firmament is there. And now what we're going to talk about is what are the characteristics of that firmament and what's actually going on to allow us to see, phenomenon like what Chris photographed. Additionally to that, we have where was I? I'll think of it later. Anyway, but there's just all kinds of optical things that are going on, and I will remember what I said in a little while. But so let's get back to what actually was photographed, okay? And Chris, so can you want to talk a little bit about this and give us the differences, and let's talk about why we think this is an actual physical object. And Cami, by all means, chime in on this and let me know if I need to present anything.
I think it's perfect going through the footage again. And with Chris, what I want people to notice when they're looking at this footage, that when you're rotating the Polaroid, we're going to go into why, but I want you to pay close attention that when you're rotating the field, well, everything else is black behind it, but you can tell it's an object. It's not a sky. See how the sky will maintain the same glow when it's only hitting the object. So look in the background and look all around while you're doing the footage and try to be aware of everything going on. And we're going to touch back and cover it one by one. But go ahead and take it, Chris.
Okay. Yeah. When I was in Colorado, the differences that we're talking about, when I was in Colorado, if people weren't here at the beginning of the show, me and Crow was in San Diego and I was in Denver. And when we both captured it, it was up and to the left. Now, when I went out to South Carolina, as you can see in the footage here, it's down and to the right. Here in Houston, when I set up my equipment and filmed it, it was directly below the sun that we do see. So that's why I think that we can eliminate the so-called refraction within the telescope itself, because if it was refraction, we would be seeing it in the exact same spot. The refraction would duplicate itself no matter where you set up and looked at it.
That's right. Or if it was an anomaly that was occurring inside of the camera itself. All right. Well, first of all, I don't know what outfit Crow was using, but the fact that, you shot this thing with the exact same camera in Colorado, Texas, South Carolina, which, by the way, proves that I live on Tatooine, right? Because I have two sons here. So you did that, and the position of this spirit sun showed up in different places, which means that it is not it is absolutely positively not a reflection that is taking place in the geometry of the camera itself, because that would be something that would be absolutely consistent. Am I wrong?
No, that's exactly right. And I've used the exact same equipment for all three observations. Not only that, we took and put like a 2 or 3 foot cardboard tube extending out from the end of the telescope, and that should take away all of the refraction, if there is any refraction within the telescope itself.
Yeah, very good. And interesting, I just got a note from Steve Falconer. It says, don't forget the iron, nickel, and gemstones found in asteroids and meteors that fall from the sky. We covered it here in Comet 6C. That could definitely be pieces of solid physical firmament. Could be. Also, as to the black sun, Rahu comes out on a full moon in Indian Vedic astrology. Would be interesting to film at night to see what you could see when the full moon is out. So interesting thought there from Steve Falconer of the Space Busters. So yeah, I mean, what we have here is, something that appears to be, when reasoned out, it appears absolutely that this is a real phenomenon, whatever it is. Now, the interesting thing about this is that it appears to respond to polarization shifts. In other words, Cami was able to do this to get it to phase in and out by putting a Polaroid filter on the front of this, or I guess you guys were able to do that, and rotate that Polaroid filter, and it would go in and out. Now, if you guys have been following Globebusters for a while, you probably heard 3, 4, 5 years ago that we started talking about this thing called the Faraday effect. Well, what is the Faraday effect? The Faraday effect is something that would happen naturally, okay, in the magnetic fields of our skies. And this is like a little 1.5-minute video here. And I'm gonna play this thing. And essentially all it's doing is we are taking light, we're passing it through a couple of magnets, and we are shifting the phase of those magnets. Oopsie, let's actually play this. We're shifting the phase of the magnets, and you can see that it literally phases that light right out, right? So this is something that we've been proposing that is actually happening in Earth's atmosphere itself, and could very well be a mechanism of Rahu and Ketu. Would that be correct, Cami, or how do you see it?
I think that would be correct. What I think on doing this, we'll talk about, before we start this, keep it on pause a minute and go back to where the Faraday effect description was at the beginning, and I'm going to talk a little bit. So take it back where it just had with the electromagnetic optical effect. That's really important. At the beginning
right
of this video. Nope, go back a little bit in the video. Right there. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, I was looking at the live instead of the StreamYard stream. But it is a magneto-optic effect which shows the interaction between light and magnetic field in a medium. It causes a rotation of the plane of polarization of light. Before we go any further, because they're going to, in this experiment, talk about a polarizer and an analyzer and some different things. And I want to take all of the mystery out of all of this so everybody is understanding what's going on, so you can see what I'm seeing. When I say what I'm seeing in this, I'm going to give you a little bit short background. That my background is gemology and gem ID. And on my desk for over almost 40 years, I had something called a polariscope, which is simply 2 Polaroid filters. If you had a pair of sunglasses that were polarized and popped the 2 lenses out, you now have a polarized, you now have a polariscope. They charge you about $100 for one, but it's simply 2 Polaroid fields that you can cross and look at through a light source. You use it on a daily basis when trying to determine what you're looking at, what type of crystal, what type of rock, in determining what something is, because everything has its own way of dealing with light. and you can measure it and test the different properties with the polariscope or with two Polaroid filters. And from that, you can deduce a lot of information about what's going on and what you're looking at. Simply what polarization is it's taking light and it's making it all linear. So I want everybody to close their eyes and picture, or you can look around your house if you have a pair of blinds on your window that go across, that you open and close, and it's a bunch of lines going across. If you put them at a little angle, you'll notice with the sun coming through, it will only let light through in one direction in straight lines, only at that angle. If you were to take your blinds and you could rotate them while you had them like partially closed where you got slits of light through, you could, again, change the lighting by what light comes in only on that one angle. Now, if you start following on these lines, that's all in your sunglasses. That's all that they are is small iodine or small little lines that absorb the light. So the light that comes into your eye only comes in one direction. Because light is bouncing off of everywhere, it gets very confusing. You get the glare and you get different, very confused views sometimes, especially you'll know if you're working with water or reflective surfaces. So the idea of taking the light and bringing it to your eye, just one slice of it so you don't get any of the glare, is why you have the polarized glasses or the polarized lenses on your cameras. And that, again, it's just taking light and letting it stream through one direction only, so you get a very, very clean, non-glary, non-reflective image. Is that pretty clear to everybody on the panel, at least? That, again, and if you would to cross them, if you were to take two of them and cross them, you would block out all of the light. Absolutely. Is that making sense, that if you took your filters and did it, you would cross out all of the light?
And it not only does it like definitive proof of a wave, but that it cannot be a particle. Right? That polarization, amplification of light, absolutely clearly defines that it must be only a wave and not a particle. The photon idea is bunk.
Correct. Yes. It's time. Hold on, I'm telling Zach 1 second.
Okay, so I think they're going to do a little screen presentation for us, which is cool, because now she's going to whip out the Polaroid filters and show you how this actually works. And we're going to try and bring this all home and show you how it's working on plain Earth with respect to the firmament and the atmospheric phenomenons that we are calling the Faraday effect. And not that we're calling, that is called the Faraday effect.
This is called, yes, this is called the Faraday effect when the filters cross. And we're going to tell you why and go to that film first. Zach is getting his camera ready because he's going to photograph some of the things that you're going to look at camera, except for I'm just going to do it live and show you how simple it is. Because people, when they hear Faraday effect, they get equations in their mind and they get scared. And I want to show you all how simple it is. While he's setting the camera up, I want you guys to think and know there are different ways that light can be polarized. Light can be polarized by a magnetic field. Any electrical or magnetic field will polarize light. It's proven. This is what the Faraday effect is taking two magnetic fields and crossing the fields over so you can extinguish the light. That's how simple it is. He's going to bring it on, but he's going to show you how the magnetic and electromagnetic fields that are created naturally by running a magnet over, actually he's running a magnet over copper beads on this when he's running it back and forth. And by running a magnet over those little copper beads on that little dial, he is inducing an electric current. That current is creating a field, and the field is polarizing the light. When he puts equipment on there called a polarizer and an analyzer, it's very simple, people. It's just hold two filters in your hand, and the back one that's stationary would be your polarizer, and your one in front of you would be your analyzer that you actually rotate. You can rotate the two filters and read a lot of things between them, so it's nothing magical. All the filters do is do the same as a magnetic field. They lineate light. So we know that light can be polarized by looking optically through lines with iodine, and not the way we do it through filters and getting the light to our eyes in one angle. We know that it can be polarized by a magnetic field. we know too that it can be polarized by a reflection, but when it's polarized by a reflection, it's something very special. It's at a very, very specific angle that's called Brewster's angle. And you have to actually rotate your image around until you get it right into the angle to be affected by it. We're going to show you this a little bit later on in the demonstration, but what we are seeing on camera through Chris is definitely more of an extinction and the feel that you would get from Faraday effect as opposed to Brewster's angle. And the reason I say that is Brewster's angle, you physically have to move the reflection to a certain angle from the plane in order to capture it and then rotate the filters. You need a very, very finicky setup, and you need to get your angles exactly right. And you actually see the reflection as you move it apart. You actually have to rotate the reflection. What we're looking at through the telescope, through Chris's, you'll notice is not acting like that type of reflection. It's not moving. It's a solid. It's not something I can move in and out of an angle at all, nor could it in different places in the telescope be part of the mirror setup. If we will need to measure the angle that we're seeing, because Brewster's angle is very well documented at glass, I believe, is 56 degrees. Mirror, each substance is going to have a specific angle it bends it at. So we should be able to rule it out anyway, but the fact is the reflection will not move like is required to Brewster's angle. So I don't know how it could possibly be that. So we're back to up in the sky, what could be polarizing the light. We don't have a filter with a bunch of lines in front of that sun. We have nothing there holding it to be the first filter up there, because we're doing this with one filter. We are causing a cross reaction with one filter. So what is up there that's acting as the second filter? We know we're going to guess that nobody has taken a big Polaroid filter or a lens and holding it up in the sky.
That's a good assumption.
And we're also going to say that that's not happening too, because not everything up in the sky is polarized. The sun we look at is not polarized and does not react to it, nor when we look at the moon and the stars are they reacting in a full Faraday effect to it. So therefore I think we can rule out that nobody's holding a Polaroid filter and that's not causing it.
Real quickly, Andy, one of the things I just want to point out too about the Faraday effect is that it also demonstrates that light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum and not, again, a particle. Because the fact that, again, the right angle between electricity and magnetism and their effects upon one another, this demonstrates that light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum because it is affected by these waves.
Absolutely, that's true. And when we do it a little bit later and add the third filter in, I'm getting that feedback now. But when we do that, it's going to be mathematically impossible for it to be a particle. It would have to be a wave or a perturbation in the wave.
Absolutely.
Exactly what you're saying, part of the spectrum.
I was just going to say, think of how ridiculous the whole concept of photons is in general. I mean, think of the speed of light, and then you have these little particles traveling through space, and then hitting you in the eyeball at the speed of light. I mean, don't you think that? I think it would hurt, wouldn't it? Like something hitting you, even if it is very small, hitting you that fast. You know?
Right there.
Yeah.
Hey, John, can you hear me now? Can you guys hear me now or no?
We can hear you. Yeah,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay. When Zach gets out here with the camera.
Bad delay though.
Boy, it's funny. I'm getting feedback. When Zach gets here with the camera, I'm going to be showing two filters that you're going to be filtering out 100% of light. So there's like a filter, you're filtering. But if you add another filter, you're going to start getting light back in. And the more filters you add, the more light you will get back in. And you can stretch these into the colored spectrum. And that is not something that happens with the particle. I can't stretch it into the spectrum, and I can't add more filters on a particle. A particle would be like putting it through sieves. You filter out 50%, it goes through. You filter out 100, nothing's going through. But if you add another filter, you don't start getting more in. That is,
yeah. You don't invent energy or mass. It just doesn't appear out of nowhere. Absolutely,
it doesn't appear, right? And we're going to show that physically. What Bob is going to show on the screen right now is he's going to show you with light the Faraday effect for everybody to see what happens with light and magnetics and an electrical current. So now would be a great time to play that film, Bob.
Okay, it's playing right now. Again, and yeah. There's that going. Okay, so when Zach brings up the camera out there, just have him mute his audio so you guys don't get a feedback going. And is he he has the join link, right, Cami?
You're in Globebusters show, Zach. So you have a join link. Bob is saying mute he's got earphones in, so he won't hear. He won't put sound out.
Oh, okay.
We're both going to be in earphones, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just, but if he doesn't mute his mic, then his mic is going to pick up you, and your mic is going to pick up you.
Oh, he's saying you need to mute your mic on it, else we'll double. He's not even turning his mic on. It's going to be me.
Okay, well that's cool. Well, then I will add him as soon as he joins the stream, which hopefully will be here any minute.
He's doing it right now, so it should be any minute. In the meantime, everybody watch the screen and what he's doing. The light of a gas burner is polarized and goes through the glass and the analyzer. Remember, the analyzer is just the one that we can rotate.
And I think we should say, don't try this at home.
Oh no, you can't try this at home. I do it I do it all day long.
Okay.
Okay, so I see him in there. He just needs to turn on his camera. There's his camera.
And if it helps in the interim, I can show you this, which demonstrates wave propagation and how wave interference is constructive and destructive, which explains the polarization of light that Cami's talking about. So if you just want to show up, that's like 1 second of just a graphic that shows you how when you have waves, not particles, but the waves, when you add them together, you get more. And when you put them out of phase, they cancel each other out. It's pretty straightforward. And this, again, would demonstrate why the people who are claiming that it's a particle, they know they're lying. I mean, they have to know that this easily explains the phenomena. And yet they say, oh, it's a mystery. We don't know why it does that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just now added that Baldini, but we're seeing it now.
Yep. So yeah, you can see on the left there is you've got the two waves at the bottom left, and those are waves that are in unison, and so they're running in the same phase. And then when you add them together, the net result is that it increases the amplitude. It doubles the amplitude of the wave. To the right, they're out of phase from one another. This is just like using the polarizing filter. 90 degrees out of phase cancels it out, so you get blackness. And so when you begin to add these filters, you will amplify the light. In fact, if you add more filters, you can even further amplify the light. That would make no sense at all with a particle. But you can continue to add, using polarizers, you can continue to add things in phase so the amplitude is greater. It's pretty straightforward.
And this, by the way, guys, is also how the laser interferometers work. The interference of the two laser beams, it's actually the single laser beam that's split into two and then comes back and creates the interference pattern.
Interference pattern, yeah. Exactly.
Yep, that's why they're called interferometers, is because it's literally an interference pattern.
Straightforward. Yep. It's
pretty straightforward. Words have meanings.
They're trying to make it really complicated, and just to put people off. But often it's really not. If you just break the words apart, start looking at etymology, you can break down what they're kind of saying. Ultimately, with almost every academic paper, what you're going to get to is in a process we don't yet fully understand. That's where we get to.
Yep. Okay.
All right. So, Zach, go ahead.
Or Cami, or whoever.
Yep, okay. Sorry. I was just trying to explain that phenomenon really quickly with the polarization so you can quickly visually understand what's happening there. Hi, Cami.
Yeah. Hello. We don't hear you, Cami. I don't know if you're muted or what, but we're not hearing you.
How about now?
Now we hear you. We hear you and see you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cami. It's nice to play with you today. Do what? Look at you? Okay, I'm going to look at you while I'm talking, and I'm just going to grab a few more filters and do it over here in the dark first. And Zach, do you want to hold one of these over your camera? We're going to show you, Zach is going to be the polarizer, and I'm going to be the analyzer. What we're doing in here is we're replicating, again, what's repeated with electronic fields and magnetic fields in this. So now you see me. Does everybody see me? What about now? Now I'm here.
Yep.
Now I'm gone. Now, when you look at that, see how it's changing with the filters, not where I am. I am not the polarized object. It is the filter that is. So when I told you to look at what's going on behind the object and around the object, I wanted you to catch that it was the object that was polarized in the field and not me. Stay right there a minute. I'm going to see if this picks up before we do it. It may not. I can do this on the screen. But you guys can tell me what you're seeing on the screen. Come closer. I think I'm going to need a background. I think I need a solid background for this because I'm going to change the color of light you see. See how you see yellow?
Yeah, this would probably be good right here.
Probably down here. It works well with the lit background. Oops. Yeah. I can do it with the screen, using the screen as a background, and we will. Bob?
Yeah.
Here, hold on.
Yes.
Do this. Let's do this. Get me on the screen here, Zach.
Yeah, so it's changing the frequency and thus the interference pattern and thus the color of the light. Absolutely.
Okay, so the computer screen, by the way, your computer screen is polarized, people. Almost everybody's screens are.
So do I need this polarized filter?
No, you don't. You're holding it. We're doing too many. That's what's going on. And as I turn this, you'll notice that I'm getting all of the colors of the spectrum out.
Very cool.
Now, all of this, all that you're looking at, when we say that polarity is all around you, and when I say it's one of the,
No, you're right.
when I say that it's a property that, like, I look to see how things react to Polaroid filters, and it's indicative of what you're looking at, objects that are polarized around you and you have in your house, anything that says cellophane is quarter polarized. So what you're seeing by the color shift, and you pull red would be the longest light wave on it, but the color shift you're seeing is just all based on bending the light waves. And things around you in your house that are polarized, anything cellophane, wrap on your flowers, cellophane tape, packing tape, again, anything in that family, you have a Polaroid filter. Sugar, if you put sugar into water, any type of crystals, not all of them, but sugar has got the right crystal pattern, a hexagonal, it's going to be polarized. So you can make sugar water, put it between two filters and change colors one by one. You say, we don't have two filters, Cami. I challenge you, if you have a pair of polarized sunglasses, I'm going to challenge you and say that you do. If you have a computer screen for one and a pair of sunglasses for the other, and it might be hard to get it through here, but you also have it's going to be hard with the light to get it through, but you do have a polarizing machine, and you can, through a personal view, get it to do it just by crossing Polaroids. That is a polariscope, is just a light box behind two cross Polaroid filters. But again, why is this significant? I want you to go back to the image that Chris picked up. That image, polarized light. What we see in the sky does not polarize light. This is denoting the only time you can get a reflection to polarized light is using Brewster's angle. And I think that we have ruled out Brewster's angle, so we've ruled out the filter in the sky. So we need a electromagnetic source or a crystal or something up there that's physical. It's denoting physicality, if that makes sense. It's denoting physicality.
Yep, and right now we're showing the sun, and you guys have the Polaroid filter, and I think this is where you are rotating the Polaroid filter, and it actually fades the sun out.
Right. Let's get the sun to fade out on here. You're going to notice your background doesn't, but your sun does. Again, look at everything going around.
I should probably speed it up a little bit here. Let's go to normal speed.
And then go back and watch the Faraday people that you can rewind on here and see that you're going to see the exact same phenomena happening with Faraday effect. Now, yeah, I do need you a little bit more. You can relax a few more minutes, but on Faraday effect, it's something that I have been predicting and looking for in the model and using to explain the eclipses. That's why I put the mirroscope into the realm originally, is when you looked at our eclipses on a flat Earth model, they really do look like magnetic fields crossing. That's how they optically behave. And if you're looking at an electric universe, you are kind of looking for electromagnetic items. You know what's up there and what would produce this effect.
Hey, Cami, I don't think that this video is showing that when you were rotating the polarized field in front of the camera when we were on the Spirit Sun. Do we have a link to?
Yes, it's in it's in Zach Good Times for All. It's also on my channel and Zach's channel. The full video is the original live stream sources on Good Times for All channel.
Okay, let me go to that. Sorry, guys. I was thinking that it was the looking at the second sun with Chris Van Matre. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, this is the full one. Now the question is where the heck is it? I might need to share with audio to do this. Hang on a second. Share audio, Chrome tab, and share.
So again, the significance when he's doing this is we're getting full Faraday effect, which is
Right there. That's not
without Brewster's angle in it. So I think now what he's looking at there and that little piece that you could move would be the reflection. That would be Brewster's angle, but that's not what he's moving. He's not moving the reflection. So this is denoting physicality in my mind. If anybody can find out how it could be denoting anything else but physicality, or if I'm missing any other piece I could be looking for. But I was expecting it if we found the actual source of the sun. And I have long believed that what we are looking for, just because of everything that I've read and every study I've done, that what we are looking at is a projection of the sun that's outside of our magnetic dome. It's shown on the Flammarion.
Exactly.
It's shown everywhere.
And in the Flammarion, that's interesting the way it shows up in the Flammarion too, because you have the sun on the inside of the dome and the sun on the outside of the dome. And just like what Flat Water, Flat Earth was showing, of course, and that was taken from the scripture read in Enoch about the, how did they term it? The gates, the gateways that the sun went through, right? And basically, so what they're saying is that spirit sun is going through, I don't know, I guess the gateways could be considered some sort of a polarizing network, and then it is being reflected back in a parabolic pattern, and this is what gives the sun its illusion of moving, right? It's not actually physically going all over the place, but it appears to be doing that because it's becoming manifest as a result of the parabolic reflection. But
Bob, that's exactly the way I read it. Right, was that it is a manifestation, and what I read to be, or at least interpreted to be, along toroidal field lines, magnetic field lines within a quadrupolar toroidal field. And interesting that you mentioned Flat Water, Flat Earth, because I was just going to mention this goes along not only with Rahu Ketu, but he did a reading of the Smoky God, A Voyage to the Inner World. He did a narration of that book, which is very specifically mentions this idea of near the North Pole that they saw what appeared to be two suns, a second sun. So fascinating stuff.
Yeah, very much so. So, that's basically, what we are proposing here, guys, is that the firmament is acting as this parabolic type of apparatus that combined with the magnetic fields that create this Faraday effect, which is an absolutely proven effect, we're getting this thing to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and add Good Times for All back into the stream. And if you guys are ready to go live, just let me know and I'll cut away from Chris's video.
Let's cut away from Chris a minute, because this was cut to Good Times for All. This is something in the chat that they were saying to me, that why isn't it the holograms talked about in the Bible? And I'm going to disagree with him, because what you're looking at is a hologram, and I want you to show, or here you can, show it in the light, what I'm doing. If you took what was described in the Bible as a vault of looking glass,
there it is.
What you get is a
vault of looking glass.
A vault of looking glass. What you get is a natural hologram emitter that plays with light. Oops,
imagine that. Just as it described. Holy crap.
So I'm going to disagree with the Bible that if anybody plays with a miroscope, which Bob will have a link to, but what you're looking at is a mirage. You can see the source and the second sun. That's what we are looking for. If you float that ball in water, see that mirror image, you can make that disappear, that reflection.
I'm curious, Cami, which part did you say was in conflict with the Bible?
None.
Oh, okay. I thought you said I'm going to disagree with the Bible, and I'm like, which?
No, not you. Somebody in the chat. Somebody in the chat. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. I got you.
I think that came out wrong. I just think it came out wrong, but she kind of misspoke. But no, I got what she said.
Yeah, right.
In other words, she's absolutely agreeing with the Bible.
That's what I thought. Right? Is like that's exactly how it describes it. Yeah.
Yes.
Biblically, also, if you see Vedic and Rahu and Ketu, the dark sun and the black sun and the sun we see, and K2, the moon that we don't see, and the moon that we see, again, it layers these things into layers. There are the objects that we don't see that are physical, and the objects that we do see in our sky. And again, if you look at,
the hologram doesn't move when I move it, but the bottom one does.
Right.
The one behind it.
Notice again, the hologram doesn't move, but the one behind it does. This hologram that we produce also, if you put ice in here, your hologram is, by the way, people, it transfers thermal very well. If you put ice in there, the hologram is cold. If you put something hot in here, the hologram is hot. If you play with light on the hologram will reflect and bounce back off of it. You don't need the source item.
Yeah, and that is a complete mind blower too, by the way, to see, because you can aim that thermometer right at the hologram itself, and that's what it's registering, and it's cold. And it's like that's crazy.
Nutty. Yeah, that is nutty. Right?
Some of Crow's work that fascinated me with the lunar wave was, and I'm wondering if we're getting the image, but I'm going to see if we can get this on camera at all. See if we can get it at all good. I'm going to get it unblurry, see if we can see any writing underneath it.
Here, hold on. Let me,
yeah, you can move it for the camera. There. I want you to look at the dark line of writing on it or anything else through the crystal. But as I rotate the filter, the writing is going to jump.
Right there it is. Yeah.
This is what I've been looking at his, oops, you can, I'm going to let Zach do it. We might work with a smaller filter too, just because of the size of that. You're not going to have the rolly. You're not going to have the rolly on it. But once you find your angle, I'm going to let you play with it. This is something that's fascinated and captured me with Crow's work is it seems to be showing what's known as the optic jump that you get with polarity perfectly.
Right. In other words, when the wave went over like the craters, we physically saw them displace. And she can recreate that filter with nothing more than a polarity strip here, basically. She's
and a double
that.
refractive material. And if you, again, it will, if we do an object, the object will jump to and move. These are, again, about 50% of the natural solids out there have something called double refraction, meaning that they have two optic axes, and how you see them and see through them depends on the polarity. And it will shift. If you shift the polarity, you'll see it in one spot. You'll pick up one axis, and when you move it, it's called the ordinary and the extraordinary ray. You'll switch back and forth between the two. It's like a switch, back and forth, back and forth. This is what I've been thinking the lunar wave is for years. Yep. Okay. Zach can stop, and you can turn off his camera now. I think we've got enough up here, Zach. I think you can be on break, but you're getting also. Oh, one more thing, Zach, before you go. Before I was going to have him put it in the dome. You can see Watkin Atkinson is putting together some visuals of me doing all of these things up close and personal with professional photography. So again, if we put a dome on top of the miroscope, it's going to propagate the image into the dome, into atmosphere. I think Bob's got some pictures on the screen of me doing that in your pictures. But watching how Polaroid and how light plays with things, what we're seeing when they capture the lunar wave and ran a Polaroid filter really, really, really strongly suggests physicality to me on that object, unless there is another way besides Brewster's angle that you can have a polarized reflection. In other words, properties too, when we're talking about properties in the mirroscope, it transfers things like thermal properties extremely, extremely well. So if I put something hot in there, it transfers the heat. If I put something cold, it transfers the cold. But what I have not got it to transfer is if I put a magnet in there, and look at even the magnet with the filter, which I can see patterns around a magnet with the Polaroid filter. If I put the magnet in the mirroscope, the hologram is not magnetic. It doesn't pick up it. So it's picking up some things, but it's not picking up all of the properties. And one of the properties that we don't get from the sun that I expected to see was Faraday effect. And we don't get it. So that's what made me think our sun was a projection too, along with all of the history. But if you found a source sun, the source sun should react just like they showed in the
Yep. So
in the camera work.
So just out of curiosity, Cam,
Yes.
you basically had offered to Crow that the possibility that what was actually causing those displacements was a natural cycle that had to do with something called a heliospheric current sheet.
Correct.
Can you explain that for everybody?
I can. Okay, I'm going to talk first, and I'm going to separate it. That these effects that I'm showing you are different type of effects based on different types of polarities and different angles, and that getting the object jumps, getting the Faraday effect, it's all ways of looking through a double, or three filters or fields on it. What we do know is I isolated when we did the lunar wave and thought that this was involved. I knew this from space weather. I've studied space weather for like 30 years now. Don't ask why, but we have something called a solar sector boundary and a heliospheric current sheet. And what this is a rotating disk that they say emanates from the sun and goes through in petals, and they have the earth in that in petals, and they're saying when the petals hit it, that's our solar boundary change. But on it, these are, if you look at it, you'll see that these are just positives and negatives of polarity. That's all it is polarized. It's just a rotating magnetic field. If you have a rotating magnetic field, you're going to have circular polarity, which is going to manifest in an Archimedean spiral like they're showing. They're doing that and saying it extends through the solar system, and it's called a Parker spiral. So we recognize this up here, and we recognize that it has positive and basically the polarity is positive and negative polarities, and you're going to get the optic shifts through there. I've often thought that Crow's work was demonized because if you put his moon into the effect, that lunar wave could be an optical jump. It would change the distance, every way that we would look at the moon, you would actually have like fringe patterns and some interest. If you looked at it through this way of looking at it, the lunar wave could disprove the heliocentric model. And I think that's, in my humble opinion, that's why it's so important and why he is so demonized and so targeted, is they never wanted anybody to associate this with it. Now, on the spiral that you're looking at that we know that's up there, they're drawing it with the sun in the middle, and they're driving the waves coming out. A lot of the times in their diagrams, because of the size of the earth and all of this, it could also be from the North Pole as opposed to the sun, or it could be the sun itself as it's moving, generating the field. So one of the things I want people to look at when they're photographing and doing this with their solar telescopes is I want them to, on their Polaroid filters, have a marked like north or a notch on your Polaroid filter that you know what direction you're holding it in. One of the curiosities I want people to look for that I don't know is this a rotating field? Are you going to have to shift your Polaroid filter at different angles to get this effect over time? That's going to help me determine if it's coming from the sun or the sun is being affected from a wave coming from the North Pole. Again, they're just different ways of looking at the visual diagram, turning it into flat Earth, and how the pieces fit in. But with the pieces and the data, we get more data and a lot better feel of how this place might really work.
Yeah, I
Hey,
agree.
can I ask a quick question related to Brewster's angle, the 56 degrees, and kind of what I limited understanding there is that potentially related to the mirror that's required to produce the rainbow effect? We know that you cannot produce a mirror indoors without using a reflection of some kind. And presumably the reason we see one outdoors and the shape that it is, again, is consistent with the idea of there being, for lack of a better term, a dome. Is that, do you think there's any correlation?
Okay, I think that the rainbow is a correlation with the dome, but I don't think Brewster's angle is a correlation with any of it, because Brewster's angle, Bob, can you bring up a video that I'm showing you what Brewster's angle is? Brewster's angle is simply taking circularly polarized light. Again, it's a very, very finicky experiment. You have to take circular polarized light, bounce it off of a mirror, and then make the reflection on a backdrop catch, right? You need to catch it on a medium. Then you have to move the medium so it's exactly a certain degree angle from your source, and at that point that light is polarized. So he's going to show you how finicky. What we're doing in moving our telescope and not setting it up, we're not getting our reflection to move. He's going to show you how he's going to get the reflection to move on the Brewster's angle.
Is this the right one? The
there's a better one
that me?
There's a better one. Maybe I didn't send you the right video where they're even doing the light beam against the wall and making the reflection move. But you have to, like when you have an image that's reflecting where he got the second sun in the thing, and as you move change the angle of the camera, you know how they separate, they get closer and further together and they merge. You have to separate the angle that way. We're not able to do this with Chris's setup, because we can't get this to move. We cannot get this, it has a physicality property, unlike a reflection so see how he's moving with the mirrors, you're moving it against that backdrop. It's saying that when you get into a certain angle, watch the one on the right, when you get the certain one on the right going over to at a very certain degree, you can cross polarize the angles perfectly and get a linear polarized light. But this is you have to have measuring devices, and you have to really line this up. It doesn't have the same feel it doesn't have the same feel at all. In other words, on Brewster's angle, when you look at a reflection of something in a mirror and you move the reflection to get closer together, and that's what you're required to do with this. On Chris's telescope, we're not moving a reflection. We can't move it. So therefore, I don't think it's very indicative this is showing polarity. Very good on this. Polaroid filters on solid objects. That's fabulous on it and reflected. And that I can get with Brewster's angle on glassing the surface. But what we're seeing, what we're seeing in the camera is not acting the same. In other words, I'm familiar with the Brewster's angle and doing it with the filters, but what we're getting is not the same effect. That is completely taking out that light. It's completely, it doesn't feel, maybe I'm wrong, and again, we can measure it, but the way that we're doing it, we cannot move the reflection and do things with it. It does not have the Brewster's angle lot. It doesn't, if it is, it's not like I've ever worked it.
There's that shadow that we always see that they call the Earth's shadow, right? They say
right.
But you're seeing that on the cardboard there. And of course, you got a flat piece of water and it's creating a shadow.
The shadow that they say that we see during the eclipse of the Earth is just the reason it looks a little bit bigger is it's the I think it's the field. If you look at the miroscope and how it lines up, I think it's the polarization of the fields crossing. So that field is going to be a little bit bigger than the object as you're doing it if you have a full passover. And again, if you line these up, putting a miroscope, think that a miroscope cross angles it and use that with, again, the sun cycles that you see in Dave Weiss's app. You'll see that where we have the eclipses is where they go through like their shadows and go through their, it's amazing. Again, if you start having a ceiling as described in every bit of literature as functioning like a looking glass or a shiny river or every way you look at it, all of a sudden you have a very dynamic sky that can explain a lot really logically. So again, I think the trick is to really going back to the descriptions and see what we're looking at and testing and setting up experiments. I've been looking for this polarity effects in the sky with the lunar wave and with the eclipses and that, and I can push them. I can push the same effects with the miroscope and with Polaroid filters and objects on the ground. So you can scale this all down. But my problem has always been is when you look at the sun and you rotate the filter, the sun that you see does not Faraday out. And in the way that I'm looking at the model, it should. Now, that's telling me that there's not physicality to the sun that we're seeing. The sun that we're seeing, just like it's getting the thermal and the different rays, just like if you beam light really hard off of a mirror, that's hot. It's hot light. It's a Fresnel lens, the different lensings of things on it. That does transfer light. That does transfer, that transfers everything.
Yeah.
I mean, it transfers everything we see and feel from the sun.
Yep. Exactly. Beautiful. So,
can
yeah.
I want to make a point.
Oh, sure.
Just if you have a mirror and you reflect the sun, it does not reflect the sun's rays all equally. The ultraviolet spectrum does not pass through
Correct.
very many substances, only fused silica, and there's one other crystalline fused. Slipped my mind, but there are two.
Wouldn't that be the properties of the mirror itself and not necessarily the light? It would just
right.
be the property.
Well, the sun is a full spectrum light,
right,
like no other, and so
black body or whatever.
It goes beyond into the infrared and ultraviolet very smoothly, like nothing else. And when you reflect it or pass it through substances, there's only fused quartz.
Yeah, quartz is what you're looking at.
Silica.
Which is hexagonal. We'll get into that. Grid strength again that does it. I'm going to put the cameras on for 2 seconds and show you these quartz.
Yeah. The media. It's always the limitation of the media, though. Yeah.
It's always the media and the interaction and how it interacts. Yeah. And crystals, again, for people not familiar with my channel, crystals grow from vibrations from the elements. They grow very quickly, rapidly. We're talking about rain turning into snow, or some crystals, really nice larger ones, might take a week or a couple months. And if you go into the crystal caves with the huge crystals, maybe years. But if the elements are right and the conditions are right, they are growing in front of you at all times, and they're really amazing. I don't think you can like crystals or rocks enough.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and they're absolutely unique as a substance for the way that they grow and create order like nothing else.
And as a self-organizing thing, that implies a kind of intelligence, a sentience, which freaks me out, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, I'm showing you right now. Here you go, and here's your test on it. I'm readily transmitting UV through quartz, by the way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm only aware of quartz and fused silica that can do that.
Now, if you'll notice, I've got fluorite, which does not readily transmit. You see how the light came and it wasn't just lit up, but it went through? I'm holding fluorite. So this is not quartz. This is a different stone. This is, or we can even do with your double refraction. That's getting a little bit through on the calcite.
I thought that was celestite. That was fluorite?
This is fluorite.
Oh, okay. Wow, I was thinking that was celestite. My bad. All right.
This is celestite.
Okay.
This is selenite. Anything else we want to pick up as far as we can do a lot of.
Willemite lights up pretty nice with you.
I have willemite. I don't have it in this room with me. I have some Libyan desert glass that's probably not too far away, and fun things, meteorites. But yeah, I have a lot of rocks around me. Not as many as Daryl Davis, and I'm jealous. But and Karen is growing quickly, so it's time to go out and dig for more. rocks, in case people don't know, grow in, these are all natural, perfectly unpolished, untouched. They grow in sacred geometry. It's just how, if they're unimpeded and don't run into other minerals that they grow into, you can see different minerals growing together and running into it. But if they're left unimpeded and there's just one forming there and not multiples running into each other, you'll see that they are your platonic solids. And if you take this one small enough and look at it under magnification, you'll see this all over the place. So your solids in there. They're amazing. I'll turn the camera off now.
Okay.
Is that a rock hound behind you?
Yeah, that's Minion the rock hound. Yep. Now Cami's the rock hound, but that's awesome. Okay, so that's basically kind of what we have so far, guys. And I think Cami's done a really nice job in putting this together, and she does elaborate on this quite a bit for the Crow interview. And as soon as Watkin Atkinson gets his video set up, that's going to be quite spectacular. Also, they took an entire day and set up all the samples, and it did multiple camera angles and really did it professionally, and did a really first-class job of it. So hopefully we'll have that out in the next couple of weeks, because Watson is doing the processing of it right now. And of course the Crow Show is up already, and you guys just need to go to his channel to hear that out. But I think that's just an audio version, so you wouldn't get a lot of the video. But that's why we wanted to bring that to you today. So
yep.
Yeah.
And if you like what I'm doing, you can subscribe to my channel. But there's somebody else on panel today, Unintended Consequences, otherwise known as Baldini. We're going to have a lot of really good work coming up. One of the reasons he needs to be in South Carolina and hands-on with me, but our ideas and that merge together, and we need to be doing the hands-on. So you can look for upcoming stuff. I think you can come look for upcoming stuff on his channel, and I'll probably mirror it over on my channel, and I hope to be doing a lot more work with him in the future. But if anybody wanted a feel of the two of us together, I would recommend on his channel a video called Even the Rocks Cry Out. And we'll discuss how crystals grow and polarity and holograms, and go into things a little bit more, and mapping. So for people that are interested in it, Globebusters is a globe busting show, and we're taking out the globe. But on the other side of it, things are starting to come together really beautiful. So any of you guys that like that stuff, please join us. If you don't like it, don't come. Don't bother commenting rudely. I'll just delete it. You don't have to like what we're doing, but if you do, share it.
All right, there you go.
I'll drop the link to that in just a moment. I'm looking for the link to that episode, because it was, here we go. It was remarkable, the information that Cami shared, and we became fast friends thereafter, because she's, as you can tell, brilliant and full of amazing information, and the curiosity is just off the charts. And I love people who are curious and want to find out how things work and get their hands on, their hands dirty. I love it. So yeah, I'm all in.
Yep, beautiful. Okay. All right, guys. Well, I think we are going to basically call that a wrap then on this show. And we got pretty much everything I wanted to say out on this, and we will be covering it more. But, like I said, this entire model was intended under a flat Earth paradigm. Obviously, we know it's ridiculous under the heliocentric model, but since there really is no heliocentric model, it's the only model we really have. So there you have it. So I guess I'll go around one last time, unless was there anything else that you wanted to present on this at all, Cami or Chris, or before we wrap it up?
No, I think Cami did a really good job of explaining it, and that's all I have.
Okay, beautiful.
I could go on forever, but then we went into show, and that's something that Baldini and I and Watson and a lot of us are working on in the background. So we have to leave something for later for you. But thank you for letting me on the show and playing today, because I'm so excited with this. And again, anybody that has questions or other ways or anything I might be missing and ways to look at it, again, don't forget to mark and tell me if you're having to rotate your Polaroid filter to get this effect. That's really important to me.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so let's take one last go around. Jon, we'll start with you, the Morgile, and tell us what you got coming up for the next week and what's happening with you, sir.
Hey, can you hear me?
We hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah, actually, I've got a bunch of projects that I've already finished, but I'm having trouble with my computer rendering. So as soon as I can get these darn things rendered, I should have a few new videos pop up, all right in sequence. So hopefully, be on the lookout for that sooner rather than. Yeah. Other than that, that this was an easy show for me. I didn't talk much.
Okay, beautiful. You're kind of cutting out a little bit there, Jon.
Am I? I'm sorry, but anyway, good show and a good presentation there, Cami.
All right, sounds good.
Means a lot coming from you, Jon. Respect that brain of yours.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
All right. Okay, so Baldini, let's go around to you. What do you got coming up, sir?
Same stuff as every week. Tuesday and Thursday morning early. Poppycock report, or right now while Rose is sort of on vacation. No, she's not on vacation. She's taking a break and getting caught up. You can catch that on my channel, the Cocky Pop Report. That's an unintended consequences. I'll drop that in the chat. Every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern, I do Unintended Consequences, the flagship show. And then Sundays and early morning, Ancient Wisdom for a Modern World, taking a look at Proverbs. In the evening at 5 p.m. on Sunday, either Sola Scriptura with Wayne McCroy or Sorta Scriptural. You just got to look at different things in Scripture. And then Wednesday night, often a panelist on Secrets of Saturn with Wayne McCroy, Jason Lindgren, and what other panelists we have.
Sound here.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, Rodrigo was saying something about sound.
Easy to find.
Okay, beautiful. All right, so Chris, what do you got coming up? Anything special or just business as usual?
Big thing coming up. Hopefully Crow can get his equipment out, and we plan on sometime here at the end of April, both simultaneously shooting the second sun.
Oh, that would be awesome. And another thing that would be really cool is if we can get that solar cycle timing down on the what's causing that wave, and be able to actually predict it. That would be huge. So hopefully we'll be able to pin that down as well.
Yes. And when I bought this telescope, I never imagined that basically when I got it, I just wanted to know what was behind that bright light, and it's turned into something more like proving the different sizes of the sun, finding the spiritual sun. It's been quite a journey over the last 4 years with it.
Yeah, indeed.
I think Chris and Crow are right on their way for becoming first Nobel Prize winners after this, the first given out in public. The Nobel Prize.
Yeah. I love that.
Absolutely. Okay. Cool. All right. So, Rodrigo, let's move to you. What do you got coming up this week, sir?
Just starting tomorrow. Thank you for having me. This is very interesting. I thought I got something wrong about the time. I saw your post on Facebook, and I thought that I was an hour late. But thank you for having me. This is fascinating. The polarizing filters and all that. I want to see where it goes further. I'm really very curious to see more of the information that's going to come out of the collaboration, and just waiting to see what Cami can do, because we've seen that there's been a lot of very, very good information that's come out. Thank you so much for having me. In my case, I'm doing a Latin course tomorrow, starting tomorrow with my patrons, and we'll see how that goes. And reading also the Bible in Latin, following to help people through the grammar, and see how long we're gonna hold that on. So some people interested in it, and it's been interesting. I'm preparing for it. And then other than that, just continuing with pretty much a live session every night. And we're having a fiddler, and I'm gonna talk with anthropology of music kind of stuff as well coming into it. Somebody contacted me who lived in the islands I lived back before I was born. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from her. That'll be Tuesday. So just keeping busy.
Okay,
as you
beautiful. As we do. All right, cool. All right. Well, thank you for that update. That's awesome. And let's move around to, I guess, UAP. Sir, what are you coming up with this coming up week?
Well, I have some videos I'm going to publish, but I wanted to kind of introduce myself to everybody as my first name, Douglas, since that came out. And
That's right. With one
Hi,
S.
Douglas.
Yeah, hello. And great. I have to say it's a great presentation every time when Cami presents. I'm always thrilled to see that, and it's really awesome. So I want to commend Cami for that. That's really neat. I want to do that myself with the holograms. And I have an Odyssey channel now, and that's going to expand. I wanted to make everybody aware of that. And I have some videos on BitChute. And I don't know if a lot of people are aware I have a Twitter account. And other than that, I'm just glad to be able to barge in here, and thanks for having me.
All right, anytime. Yes, so doors always open for you because you always have something interesting to say. So that definitely works for us. All right, beautiful. All right, I think that's everybody except for Jeran. And Jeran, you got all kinds of new things going off. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing these days.
Busy. It was a great show, though. I learned a lot and lots more to look into. So thanks, Cami and Baldini and Zach and UAP. And as always, Jon and Rodrigo and Bob. I think you too. Thanks, Bob. But
thanks.
So I've got my patrons only hangout is today. That's at 3:30. So in about a half hour, 40 minutes or whatever. So patrons, check your email or recent patron posts, and you'll be able to grab that link. And I'll see you guys then. Let's talk about some stuff. And yeah, hope everybody was able to check out Friday's show, the new Friday show. That'll be 12 noon going forward. And we'll see you tomorrow night for Raw. And then thank everybody who was at the crypto class yesterday. And the email is about to go out with the link to the video and all the documents and all that stuff. So thanks, everybody.
Beautiful. Yeah, you are busy. Well, that's good, though, because that's definitely helping things out in the living situation. So I'm happy for you. I'm glad everything's working out.
Right.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, we're going to call that a show. And oh, you still there, Cami?
I'm still here. Can I mention one more?
Oh my God, I forgot you. No, I didn't. Did I forget you?
I kind of jumped in on somebody else's, but okay. I do have one that people can find me on my channel, Aisling717. You can also find me every Friday night with Zach and the boys being nerd stuff. Everything's allowed on Iron Realm Media every Friday night at 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. And if you want to hang out and play nerds with me and the guys, please join us over there. Great group of people.
All right, beautiful. Okay, yeah, they totally geek out too. They do it on Wednesday nights as well, and then of course the Iron Realm show is also on Friday morning and Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. Eastern. If you're ever up that early, then join them on their, I believe, their secondary channel for that, because right now they're operating off a strike. So hopefully that will be changing soon. All right, guys, that's a show. See you next week. Have a good one. Love everybody. Be good to each other. Don't lie to each other. Open your mind, because there is truth inside. Peace out, everybody.
Peace.
Peace.